Chapter 4377. In the beginning we also investigated in this direction. We wanted to start with the missing girls, but after investigating for so long, we found that there weren't many missing girls in the Sea of Verdant Arc recently. It wasn't until this coincidental opportunity that we realized we had made a mistake. Qi Wenhan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Mistake? What do you mean? Linny was a little surprised. A leopard couldn't change its spots, especially since Wu Baoliang was an evil cultivator. His cultivation method meant that he couldn't turn over a new leaf unless he stopped cultivating. Brother Ling, do you know that Cheng Haonan and Cheng Qitian also cultivate a yin harvesting technique? Qi Wenhan asked. Of course. Linny nodded. The first person he and Huang Xiaotao saw when they arrived at the Sea of Verdant Arc was Cheng Qitian, and this guy tried to steal Huang Xiaotao. It would be strange if he could forget this. In truth, the father and son pair did not cultivate this kind of yin harvesting cultivation method a few years ago. It was only after a military advisor came to the Poison Eye mercenary group that the father and son pair began to cultivate this cultivation method. This cultivation method is of the same origin as the evil cultivation method that Brother Ling mentioned that specializes in poisoning women. At that time I was still puzzled, why did the father and son pair suddenly start to cultivate this kind of evil cultivation method? Only now do I know that their yin harvesting technique was taught by the new military advisor, Qi Wenhan explained. So, the new military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary band is? Lin Yi's heart moved. Yes, it is the Wu Baoliang that Brother Ling is looking for. Qi Wenhan nodded heavily and said, not long after this person arrived in the Verdant Arc Sea, he became acquainted with the Qing father and son. Moreover, he has been holed up in the Poison Eye mercenary group, living in seclusion. His actions are extremely secretive, and he rarely shows himself outside. Therefore, very few people know about him. Most people wouldn't pay much attention to him if they saw him. If that's the case, if he doesn't poison a lot of women, how does he continue to cultivate his evil technique? Lin Yi asked curiously. I've asked my informant to find out. I don't know the exact reason, but ever since Wu Baoliang joined the Poison Eye mercenary group, he often spent time with the Qing father and son. According to my speculation, the three of them should be studying the mental cultivation method. They should have improved the mental cultivation method so they don't kill so many first ladies like before. As Qi Wenhan spoke, he revealed a piece of information. Wu Baoliang's position in the Poison Eye mercenary group is very high. The women he usually uses for cultivation are actually shared with the Qing father and son, so it's very difficult for outsiders to notice. Puff! Lin Yi almost burst out laughing when he heard this. The Qing father and son were really outrageous. They played with an outsider like Wu Baoliang all day long. Were they not afraid of getting sick? I see. But since his whereabouts are so secretive, how did you find out? Lin Yi asked. If it wasn't for the cooperation between the Poison Eye mercenary group and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, we might not be able to find Wu Baoliang even after another year of investigation. Qi Wenhan laughed. What do you mean? Lin Yi was a little puzzled. The announcement of cooperation was one thing, but the two parties couldn't possibly announce the names of all the people, unless there was something wrong with their brains. The reason is very simple. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency also wants to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. According to the rules of the event, all the escort agencies that register to participate must provide a list of participating escorts. We are on the list provided by the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. We found a new name. It's the Wu Baoliang that Brother Ling is looking for. Qi Wenhan laughed. No wonder. Lin Yi finally understood. This made sense. At this critical juncture, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency suddenly merged with the Poison Eye mercenary group. It must be to prepare for the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. Transferring experts from the Poison Eye mercenary group to participate in the event was a matter of course. As the military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary group, it was only natural that Wu Baoliang was included. This was good. If Wu Baoliang had been hiding in the Poison Eye mercenary group, even if they knew about him, Lin Yi couldn't do anything to him. After all, it was impossible for him to charge into the Poison Eye mercenary group alone and kill him. With Lin Yi's current strength, it would be impossible for him to succeed. However, since Wu Baoliang was determined to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event, it was a good opportunity. As long as Lin Yi also participated, it would be justifiable to kill him. Moreover, he could also help the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. It was killing two birds with one stone. It seems that even Wu Baoliang is asking me to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. If I don't go, it won't be right. Linny couldn't help but laugh. Haha, it's great that young hero Ling is willing to help us. We can't thank you enough. Moreover, we're all on the same side, so let's not waste words. Come, pour it all into the wine. Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan looked at each other and smiled. They raised their cups at the same time to show their gratitude. Haha, in your eyes, I'm helping the escort agency, but in my eyes, it's actually the agency that gave me a chance to openly deal with Wu Baoyang. It's a mutually beneficial thing, so there's no need to thank me. Linny smiled and immediately raised his cup to drink. Great. Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan also drank to the end. Steward Song and the others around them also drank with them and cheered loudly. By the way, Brother Qi, have you heard anything about my senior brother Lu Bianren? Linny turned to ask. There's no news about this. After all, there are too few characteristics. Brother Ling, your senior brother Lu must be a low-key person and won't appear in public. Even if he does, he won't attract attention. So, until now, I haven't heard anything valuable. Qi Wenhan shook his head and then said, But Brother Ling, don't worry. I've already spread the news. In the future, as long as your senior brother Lu appears, we should be able to get wind of it. You can just wait for the news with peace of mind. Well, that's all I can do for now. Although Linny was a little worried about Lu Bianren, it was useless to be impatient when it came to finding someone, so he could only put it aside for now. This banquet could be said to be a happy occasion for both the guests and the host. Whether it was Qi Wenhan, who was already familiar with him, or Qi Mingyuan, who was meeting for the first time, the father and son were compatible with Linny. They didn't need to pretend to deal with each other, nor did they feel awkward or speechless. It was a very natural interaction between friends, happy and harmonious. Chapter 4378. What's wrong? Seeing Anish Chai's anxious expression, Linny thought that something had happened. Vice Chairman Hong has sent a letter along with the headquarters resolution. Please take a look. Anish Chai could not hide his nervousness as he handed the two sealed letters to Linny. These two letters not only determined Wei Xiaodong's fate, but also Anish Chai's. No wonder he was so nervous. Really? So fast? Linny was slightly shocked. He did not notice it before, but this trip to the Verdant Arc territorial waters gave him a deep understanding of the Hong Merchant Association's efficiency. It was indeed worthy of being the second-ranked merchant association in Heaven Stage Island. Such efficiency was not something an ordinary faction could compare to. Linny took the two letters from Anish Chai. In fact, they were talking about the same matter. Just as Hong Zhong had said in his previous letter, the upper echelons of the Hong Merchant Association had decided to recall Wei Xiaodong back to Middle Island as an ordinary manager. The punishment for Wei Xiaodong remains unchanged. It seems like the backer behind him really values him to this extent. Linny could not help but sneer. How could this be? Anish Chai's face turned pale as he stood there in a daze. He did not know if it was fear or regret. His mind was blank and he did not know what to do. Wei Xiaodong was only an ordinary manager in name when he returned to Middle Island. Whether it was status or authority, he was much weaker than the branch's vice manager. However, the other party had a backer behind him. If he really wanted to deal with Anish Chai, wouldn't it be a matter of a few words? Seeing Anish Chai's apocalyptic reaction, Linny could not help but smile. This guy was indeed an expert in the management of a merchant association. He was a rare talent, but he could not change his cowardly nature. If he did not have a powerful backer behind him, he would not be able to make a name for himself in this lifetime. Other than the decision on Wei Xiaodong, there is another matter regarding you. Lin Yi's expression was unfathomable as he kept Anish Chai in suspense. Anish Chai was shocked and almost fell to the ground. He stuttered in fear, What does it say? Yes, it says here. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position as the branch's vice manager. Lin Yi furrowed his brows slightly, causing Anish Chai's eyes to darken and he almost fainted. Lin Yi smiled and continued, From the day the headquarters sends the resolution, the vice shopkeeper Anish Chai will be appointed as the new shopkeeper. Branch manager? You want me to be the branch manager? Anish Chai was completely dumbfounded, followed by ecstasy. From hell to heaven, this great sorrow and joy came too suddenly. After being the vice shopkeeper of the branch for so many years, Anish Chai didn't have any thoughts of being promoted. That was definitely deceiving himself and others. However, he also knew that with his own connections and abilities, it was no different from a lunatic's ravings. Even in his dreams he was secretly thinking about it. This time he was forced to step forward to testify against Wei Xiaodong and was unable to kill him with a single blow. At first he thought that he was going to be unlucky. It would be lucky if he could keep his life, but who would have thought that the position of branch manager would fall right on top of his head? This was not just a pie falling from the sky, it was a fucking mountain of gold falling from the sky. Not bad. With your abilities, you are more than qualified to be a branch manager. Don't let down Hong Zhong's trust in you in the future. Lin Yi hinted with a smile. The matter was clear. Hong Zhong personally went to the headquarters on Middle Island and had a face-to-face exchange with the higher-ups. Although he wasn't able to severely punish Wei Xiaodong, he definitely didn't return empty-handed. The branch manager position that fell on Honest Chai's head was obtained after contending with the higher-ups from the headquarters. Yes. I will do my best to live up to your and Vice Chairman Hong's appreciation and promotion. Honest Chai hurriedly swore to the heavens and couldn't contain his excitement. Did it say where I'm going? It said it's here. Lin Yi glanced at him. But according to the Hong Chamber of Commerce's rules, isn't it a promotion at a different location? Honest Chai was momentarily stunned. At the branch manager level, no matter who it was, they had to strictly abide by the rules of a different location. This was a dead rule set by the founder, no matter how powerful one's background was. It's different. Your situation is special, so special circumstances can only be handled according to special circumstances. Only you know the situation of the Y branch best. If you leave now, the branch manager and vice manager will be new. Not to mention controlling the overall situation, they might not even be able to clear up the accounts. Who knows, they might even mess up the Y branch. Even the headquarters can't take such a huge risk. Lin Yi smiled as he shook his head. Both branches were branch managers, but letting Honest Chai be promoted and letting him lead another branch would have a completely different effect. Honest Chai's cowardly personality was already set in stone. Once he was transferred to another branch, it would be difficult for him to control the situation. There was a high possibility that his subordinates would take over his position. A branch manager would only be a figurehead in name. But the Y branch was different. He had been operating here for so many years and knew everything like the back of his hand. Especially after the incident with Wei Xiaodong and with Lin Yi's help, the reputation he had built up during this period was enough for him to control the overall situation. That's true. The situation in the sea here is very chaotic and complicated. Adding on Wei Xiaodong's matter, it's hard for outsiders to get started without at least a year or so. Honest Chai nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. Being promoted to branch manager was already the best outcome for him. If not, he would really be so worried that he wouldn't be able to sleep. Alright, bring this resolution from the headquarters back for everyone to see. Whatever happens in the Y branch in the future will be in your hands. I still have things to do here at the security agency, so I won't be going over for a while, Lin Yi said. Yes, I promise I won't let you down. Honest Chai received the resolution from the headquarters and left in high spirits. Ever since he became a branch manager, his temperament had clearly changed. At least he didn't look as timid as before. Although it wasn't obvious, there was already a bit of an aura around him. Lin Yi looked at Honest Chai's back and nodded his head. He hoped that this guy could take charge and at least hold the Y branch firmly in his hands. Otherwise, Hong Zhong's efforts to fight for him would be wasted. The reason why Lin Yi stayed at the Equal Heaven Escort Agency was because the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference was about to begin. Chapter 4379. Since he had promised Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, Lin Yi naturally would not go back on his word. Even if it was to take the opportunity to deal with Wu Baoliang, he had to help them. However, before leaving, Lin Yi had a small gathering with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. This was the last time they would meet. On the morning of the second day after they reluctantly parted ways, the Morning Star Academy's large ship slowly left the Crepe Arc Pier under the watchful eyes of the crowd. From now on, the three of them would go their separate ways. If Lin Yi wanted to meet the two girls again, he would have to wait for God knows how long. However, if everything went smoothly and his strength increased quickly enough, it was still possible. After the people from the Morning Star Academy left, the bustling Crepe Arc City returned to its usual rhythm. Although it was still chaotic, at least there were not as many people in the streets and alleys. Compared to before, it was much calmer. The Crepe Arc Pier was finally reopened. In the midst of the hustle and bustle, a mighty ship set sail amidst the shouts of the crowd. On the flagship, 4 large black gold words fluttered in the wind: Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. The majestic ship was far from being comparable to the Morning Star Academy's large ship, but compared to the other ships at the pier, it was already considered a giant. It was not strictly a treasure ship, but it already had the basic functions of a treasure ship. It was rare to see one in the Crepe Arc Pier. It was a display of the strength and foundation of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, one of the 5 major escort agencies in the South Continent. The South Continent Escort Agency's grand gathering was not held in the Crepe Arc Pier, but on the other side of the South Continent, 1,000 miles away from the dark cold sea. As one of the 5 major escort agencies, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a step ahead of the other escort agencies. According to the rules, each of the 5 major escort agencies had to send one person to act as a judge and form a judging team. This was the privilege that came with the status in the Jianghu. However, even if they could send a judge, it was impossible to cheat under the watchful eyes of the crowd. After all, there were people from the other 4 escort agencies restraining each other. None of them could control the event as they pleased. The existence of a judging team. At most, it could only guarantee that his family wouldn't suffer a loss. As for the rest, it was only honor. There weren't many substantial benefits. It would take at least 5 days to travel from the verdant Arc territorial waters to the cold Devil territorial waters by sea. However, with the flag of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency hanging there and a group of experts in full force, the journey was smooth. No matter how blind the pirates were, they would have to retreat at this moment. Otherwise, they would really run into the muzzle of a gun. They only cared about killing, not burying. Along the way, Lin Yi and the people of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency arrived at the Devil Cold territorial waters. They entered a high-class inn in the city and were accommodated by Steward Song. The others didn't have anything to do for the time being, but Qi Mingyuan, the chief escort, went to work as soon as he got off the ship. Nominally, it was for each of the 5 major escort agencies to send out a judge. They could send anyone they wanted, but in reality, the judging panel was actually made up of the brains of the 5 major escort agencies. This was an unwritten rule throughout the years. Most people didn't even have the right to speak up when they went. Only their respective head escorts could attend the judging panel. Qi Mingyuan needed to be busy, but Qi Wenhan, the young master, didn't have anything to do. Steward Song had made arrangements for the people in the escort agency. He only needed to wait for the event to begin. Similarly, Lin Yi had nothing to do. The two hit it off and immediately went out for a stroll. During this period of time, Lin Yi's Golden Core realm had been completely consolidated. After all, compared to others, it was easier for an expert of the Golden Core realm to achieve a perfect breakthrough. Moreover, with Lin Yi's aptitude, how could it be calculated with common sense? However, any breakthrough required an opportunity. Lin Yi had only consolidated his Golden Core realm in the Golden Core realm. If he wanted to go to the next level, he still needed some time. Therefore, he might as well go out with Qi Wenhan to relax and stroll around Devil Lung City. Walking on the main street of Devil Lung City, Lin Yi found that it was obviously much more orderly than Weiwan City. Among the few seas in the South Continent that Lin Yi had been to, Weiwan City was chaotic. Zhenduan City was even more chaotic, but only Devil Lung City was peaceful. Everything seemed to be normal and orderly, almost no different from the North Island. He didn't know if this place was like this, or if it was because of the South Continent Escort Agency event that someone was deliberately maintaining order. In short, walking down the street, Lin Yi didn't see any fights or trouble. If it was Weiwan City, he would have seen 4 or 5 fights or even more. Hey, there are a lot of people over there. Brother Ling, let's go over and have a look? Qi Wenhan suddenly pointed to a chamber of commerce. Compared to other shops on the other streets, this chamber of commerce was obviously very popular. It was crowded up and down, and the degree of business was astonishing. The Central Chamber of Commerce? Lin Yi looked at the signboard and was stunned. The Central Chamber of Commerce gave people the feeling that it had risen rapidly overnight. It was so fast that even the top chambers of commerce on Heaven Level Island, such as 5 Elements Commerce and Hong Chamber of Commerce, were greatly impacted and threatened. He didn't expect that it would also exist in the Devil Lung Sea. Yes, I've heard people talking about it recently, but I've never come to see it. Since I happened to see it this time, I'll have to take a look, Qi Wenhan said with some excitement. Okay, then let's go in and have a look. Lin Yi nodded. He was also very interested in this Central Chamber of Commerce, especially the various kinds of goods sold in the secular world. If he could successfully find out the secret of this, he might be able to freely travel between Heaven Level Island and the secular world. This temptation was not small. The two of them immediately followed the crowd and walked inside. Sounds of people clicking their tongues could be heard from time to time. Looking at the various goods on the display shelves, Qi Wenhan was very curious, but Lin Yi was a little disappointed. Just like how the Central Chamber of Commerce made its name, the goods on the display shelves were some common things in the secular world. From common technological products to some practical tools, there was even food unique to the secular world. Lin Yi was a little absent-minded and felt that he had returned to the secular world. This was simply a department store. Of course, in the secular world, this could only be considered a very ordinary department store. It was far from those large-scale supermarkets. But even so, besides being disappointed, Lin Yi was also quite surprised. After all, this was Heaven Level Island. This kind of department store could be seen everywhere in the secular world, but to bring so many goods to Heaven Level Island, the meaning of this was really not small. Chapter 4380. Like everyone else, Qi Wenhan was very interested in all of these new things that the secular world had brought up. He walked left and right in high spirits. Lin Yi, on the other hand, followed behind him with a helpless expression. A dignified mid-stage golden elixir expert was actually shopping in the secular world's department stores on this heavenly island. Just thinking about it made one drunk. What made one even more speechless was that these common goods that could be found everywhere in the secular world could be sold for a sky-high price. Moreover, there were so many people fighting to buy them. The business was so good that it was unreasonable. Lin Yi made a rough estimate. Just by following Qi Wenhan around, the turnover had already reached the scale of tens of thousands of spiritual jades. It was almost comparable to the income of his Tiandan pavilion in an entire day. One had to know that in Tiandan pavilion he was selling top-grade elixirs. In the end, they could not even compare to these secular department stores in the Central Chamber of Commerce. Such a result really made one not know whether to laugh or cry. In terms of actual value, any top-grade elixir from Tiandan Pavilion was enough to buy an entire street of secular department stores. It could only be said that the rarer something was, the greater its value. This old saying was really true. Lin Yi and Qi Wenhan chatted as they shopped. Although the latter showed great interest in these secular department stores, it was basically out of curiosity. There were very few things that could really catch his eye. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan had received elite training from a young age. He was a typical example of this. These people did not lack the heroic spirit to spend a lot of money, but at the same time, they had extraordinary self-control. If he randomly saw a new thing and was tempted to spend money like dirt, no matter how rich his family's wealth was, there would come a time when it would be squandered. If that happened, Qi Wenhan would not be an elite, but a pure prodigal son. Qi Mingyuan would not be at ease to hand over such a large Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to him. Novelty was novelty, but these things were obviously just for fun. However, there wasn't much practical value in it. Qi Wenhan was just looking at it for novelty. If he really bought it, it could only mean one thing. He was out of his mind. Anyone with the slightest bit of ambition would not spend a large amount of spiritual jades on some playthings. Instead of spending money on these useless things, it would be better to buy some treasures related to cultivation, whether it was pills or weapons. Any one of them was much more practical than these secular goods. The two of them strolled around the first floor. After sighing in admiration, they turned around and went to the second floor. However, compared to the bustling first floor, the second floor was obviously much more deserted. Lin Yi looked around and found that the second floor did not sell the signature secular department stores of the Central Chamber of Commerce. Instead, it sold a variety of natural treasures and rare elixirs. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Things that are used to attract people's attention are selling so well, but the real good things are actually not being sold. That's right. It seems that this Central Chamber of Commerce is quite ambitious. Qi Wenhan was also a sensible person. He nodded in agreement. The Central Chamber of Commerce's strategy was very clear. They would use the secular department stores to create a huge gimmick in public opinion to attract everyone over. However, it was not willing to do so. Natural treasures were the main products of the large chambers of commerce, and they were also on this heavenly island. The most marketable items could be popular for a while by relying on novelty, but it could not be so popular forever. Anyone with a discerning eye could see this. Naturally, the Central Chamber of Commerce also knew this. Therefore, it had to quickly transform into a mainstream top chamber of commerce while the secular department stores were still able to attract attention, and even become a true giant. Although there weren't many people buying these natural treasures for the time being, the Central Chamber of Commerce had to make up for it. Not only did it have to make up for it, but it also had to make it better than the other chambers of commerce. Only then could it truly stand firm and prosper in the long run. What surprised Lin Yi was that he actually saw quite a few rare natural treasures on the second floor. Even the Hong Chamber of Commerce rarely saw them. It could be seen that although the Central Chamber of Commerce had risen overnight, its foundation was incomparably deep. Ordinary chambers of commerce could not compare at all. No matter how it developed in the future, if it continued like this, it would definitely be able to occupy a place on the heavenly island. It might not be the number one, but it would definitely be among the top 3 without a doubt. This central chamber of commerce is really aggressive and full of ambition. Linny smiled noncommittally. His gaze swept back and forth between the extremely rare natural treasures, but he had no intention of buying them. Although these things were rare, they were not like the star ink milk or the 10,000 crossing golden core fruit, which could be used by everyone. Their uses were relatively simple. If it wasn't for some special circumstances, not only would they not be used for the time being, they might not even be used in the future. Linny was only slightly interested. However, when Qi Wenhan, who was beside him, saw these things, his eyes immediately lit up. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, his experience was not something that an ordinary person could compare to. Of course he could tell what the truly good things were. "Waiter, bring this sky snow vine down for me to take a look." Qi Wenhan immediately extended his hand and beckoned a waiter over. He pointed at one of the items with great enthusiasm. He would not buy the common goods on the first floor, but if this was a truly good item, he would not hesitate to spend more spirit jades. Linny smiled and strolled around by himself. He had originally wanted to wait for Qi Wenhan, but seeing that he was chatting enthusiastically with the waiter, he did not disturb him. He turned around and walked to the third floor. Compared to the bustling first floor, there were already very few people on the second floor. However, the third floor was practically empty. Linny was a little surprised as he sized up the place. He realized that there were no display racks, but rather luxurious and elegant private rooms. It seemed like a place for people to chat and rest. Those clients who did large business should be discussing with the Central Chamber of Commerce's manager in this place. However, why was there not a single person here? Wasn't business booming downstairs? One could not blame Linny for guessing this way. Any normal person would have the same thought. After all, everything the Chamber of Commerce did was to trade with people. However, what Linny did not expect was that this Central Chamber of Commerce was a little different from the other large chambers of commerce that he had seen before. Although the second floor was deserted, there were at least some customers. However, there was not a single customer on the third floor. There was only one reason for this. This place was not open to the public. No one was allowed to enter without permission. Normally, the entrance to the staircase was guarded. Moreover, those who frequented the Central Chamber of Commerce all knew this rule. Normally, they would not gather here, let alone go up to the third floor without permission. However, in the past few days, because the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly was about to be held here, it had attracted a large number of outsiders. As a result, the already bustling Central Chamber of Commerce's business became even more lively. Chapter 4381. Just like what Linny had just seen, there were too many guests on the first floor. Usually, there were only a few waiters who couldn't handle it, so they had no choice but to transfer all the staff over. Even the second floor only had one waiter left. Qi Wenhan, on the other hand, had called him over for questioning. That was why Linny was able to get to the third floor without any obstructions. Seeing that there was no one around, although Linny felt a little surprised, he didn't intend to stay any longer. He was about to turn around and go downstairs when his ears suddenly twitched. There was actually someone talking in a private room not far away. Linny was suddenly shocked. He had just used his divine sense to scan the third floor and didn't sense anyone's presence. Even if he didn't look particularly carefully, just a rough scan, it must be a rare expert to be able to hide from his divine sense. What kind of person would be so secretive as to intentionally conceal their aura while conversing in a private room? Linny couldn't help but be a little curious, but that was all. He didn't want to disturb other people's conversation. However, a sentence from this private room suddenly made him stop. Recently, these miscellaneous items are in high demand. We have to find a way to let the headquarters send more from the secular world. Otherwise, we may run out of supplies in 2 days. Yes, the inventory was already running low yesterday. If we don't get them to send the goods quickly, we will definitely run out of supplies here. That will be troublesome. I'll think of a way to urge them again. Fortunately, the teleportation is near us, so our branch will be the first to choose. Otherwise, even if it's teleported here, it won't be our turn. Maybe we won't even get the leftovers. That's right, the strategy of the headquarters is really brilliant. They set off a secular craze in the 5 Heaven Stage Islands, making these items from the secular world a trend on the Heaven Stage Islands, becoming a symbol of identity and status. Forcing everyone to compete to buy them, and if they don't buy, they will lose face and can't raise their heads in front of their friends. Even if we include the teleportation channel, the cost of each item is at most a few dozen spiritual jades, but it can be sold for a sky-high price of thousands or even tens of thousands. Is there any business more profitable than this in the world? In the secular world, this is called a monopoly. Who asked us to be the only ones who have these things? No matter how high the price is. They can only obediently hand over their spiritual jades, ha. Lin Yi's heart shook and he carefully walked over. Ever since the Central Chamber of Commerce had appeared, he had always been curious about it. He was especially curious about how it could bring items from the secular world to Heavenly Fate Island. Based on their words, they should be people from the Central Chamber of Commerce. Perhaps he would be able to learn some clues. He held his breath and focused. Lin Yi did his best to restrain his aura, trying his best to blend in with his surroundings. Concealment and concealment were the most important lessons for an assassin. Lin Yi had always been an expert in this field. Not to mention experts of the same level, even experts who were an entire realm higher than him would find it difficult to detect. However, before Lin Yi could get close, the two people in the private room suddenly quieted down. They stopped talking halfway. Lin Yi suddenly shivered. Oh no. This was not a place to stay for long. There was no time to react and no time to think about anything else. Lin Yi made a prompt decision and quickly put on the thousand silk mask, changing his face and then turned to leave. Unfortunately, Lin Yi's movements were too slow. Two figures appeared and disappeared mysteriously, blocking his path of retreat. Lin Yi was shocked. What level of experts were these two? He had been so careful and restrained, but he was still easily caught by them. The two men who appeared in front of him, one dressed in black and masked, and the other had a sinister appearance. The similarity was that both of their auras were unfathomable. Lin Yi's golden finger could not detect them at all. In other words, they were at least nascent soul experts. However, Lin Yi had seen many nascent soul experts. Unless it was an existence like the will of heaven, others did not give him much pressure. However, these two people in front of him made even the true qi in his body unconsciously move. This was something he had never seen before. It showed that these two people were definitely not ordinary. Who are you? How dare you break into the central forbidden area? Ma Tianlang, take him down. The man in black ordered without saying anything. The sinister man named Ma Tianlang, who was standing next to him, had a murderous look in his eyes, and immediately exploded. When Ma Tianlang made his move, Lin Yi's heart suddenly became turbulent. Before, he already felt that these two people were not ordinary. After the other party made his move, he finally saw their strength clearly. They were actually super experts of the profound ascending stage. Even in the Morning Star Academy of the East Continent, profound ascending stage experts were also the existence of the three giants. What kind of god was this Central Chamber of Commerce? How could they meet such monsters so casually? More importantly, this Ma Tianlang seemed to be just a subordinate of the man in black. With Lin Yi's current strength in the middle gold core stage, if the opponent was only a nascent soul expert, even if it was two late nascent soul experts, as long as he used his trump card, he still had a chance to fight. Not to mention killing the two of them, but at least taking advantage of the chaos to escape, this was not a big problem. But now, the opponent was a super expert of the profound ascending stage who was 2 realms higher than him. How could he deal with this? No matter how heaven-defying Lin Yi was, it was impossible for him to fight against such a ridiculously strong profound ascending stage expert with a mere middle gold core stage cultivation. Otherwise, the only result was that Lin Yi would not even have time to react and would be instantly defeated on the spot. Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I'm just a guest. Lin Yi quickly shouted. It was definitely impossible to make a move. He could only use this to make the other party slightly relax his vigilance and act according to the situation. Guest? Ma Tianlang looked up and down at Lin Yi, seeing that he was indeed unfamiliar, and seeing that there was no staff on duty on the 3rd floor, he believed a little in his heart, but he still sneered, misunderstanding my ass. Since you broke into this place, then don't even think about leaving. After that, Ma Tianlang's figure floated, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Lin Yi and grabbed Lin Yi's right shoulder with one hand. Feeling the murderous aura in the other party's hand, even Lin Yi couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. The other party didn't use much force, and the true qi in his body was already somewhat stagnant. If he couldn't mobilize his true qi, he would be no different from an ordinary person. He could only be slaughtered by others. The difference in strength between the two was too great, and he really had no power to resist. However, Lin Yi was still a little glad in his heart. Fortunately, he said these words, and the other party only controlled him and didn't directly kill him. Otherwise, he would have become a corpse by now. Chapter 4382. Throw him into the dungeon. The man in black said emotionlessly, then turned around and left. Ma Tianlang brought Lin Yi out of the Central Chamber of Commerce through the back door. Lin Yi looked around quietly, ready to find a chance to create chaos and escape. However, the man in black did not give him a chance. He grabbed his right shoulder and jumped up. His speed was so fast that not even his shadow could be seen. The passers-by on the street did not seem to notice their existence. Lin Yi's heart sank. It was difficult to mobilize the genuine qi in his body. Not to mention using martial arts, he could not even use genuine qi to protect his body. Moreover, his right shoulder was being held tightly by the man in black. In this situation, if he moved even a little, his right shoulder would probably be crushed into powder, let alone escape. Lin Yi had no choice but to give up the idea of resisting. He let Ma Tianlang hold his right shoulder and obediently let him carry him away. After leaving the Chamber of Commerce, Ma Tianlang suddenly sped up. Lin Yi only felt that his vision was blurred, and a moment later, he did not know which corner of Mo City he was in. Ma Tianlang brought Lin Yi to a civilian house. It looked no different from the other buildings around it. After entering it, there seemed to be no difference. However, after passing through a few secret doors, the scene was very different. In front of him was a long, dark tunnel. No one knew where it led to. Ma Tianlang then carried Lin Yi for a while. After an unknown period of time, Ma Tianlang finally stopped. Lin Yi looked around carefully. There was an entrance in front of him. It seemed to be the dungeon that the man in black mentioned before. There were 2 guards at the entrance. His golden finger could not see through their realms, so they were obviously powerful people. Moreover, the aura they exuded was far stronger than that of an ordinary original infant stage master. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but feel a chill in his heart. So far, none of the people he had come into contact with were easy to deal with. No matter how he looked at it, this central chamber of commerce could not be as simple as a chamber of commerce, right? Just who was behind it? Ma Tianlang nodded to the 2 guards, raised his leg and kicked Lin Yi into the dungeon. Then he walked away. No candlelight, no fluorite. The dungeon was pitch black, so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers if they stretched out their hands. They couldn't even sense the situation in their surroundings, only knowing that it was eerie and creepy. An ordinary person would probably be scared half to death. However, Lin Yi was fine. Ma Tianlang didn't grab his right shoulder, and the genuine qi in his body was restored. No matter what happened, he would always have the strength to protect himself. Moreover, the surrounding environment. It was clearly visible to his divine sense. The area of this dungeon was not small. At first glance, it looked like a small square. The surrounding walls were faintly emitting the aura of a protective formation. It was extremely hard, and if one wanted to break through it with force, it would be impossible. To ordinary people, it was just wishful thinking. At the very least, ordinary nascent soul experts would not be able to shake it. Unless it was a profound ascending stage powerhouse, or a heaven-defying existence like the Will of Heaven who was at the peak of the nascent soul stage but could easily kill a profound ascending stage powerhouse. "Kit, are you new here? What did you do?" At this time, a rude voice suddenly sounded in the darkness. Lin Yi turned his head towards the voice. The person who spoke was a man with a face full of scars. His appearance was very fierce and scary, and his whole body exuded a strong violent aura. This guy was definitely not to be trifled with. Other than the man with the scar, there were quite a number of people locked up in the dungeon as well, all of them staring at Lin Yi. Some were eager to try, some were gloating, and some were watching coldly. In short, not a single one of them was friendly. After a careful glance, his divine sense probed these people one by one. Lin Yi was shocked. "What are you waiting for? Do you have any good things in your hands? Take them out and share them with me, otherwise don't blame me for being rude." The scar-faced man thought that Lin Yi was scared by him, so he sneered complacently. At the same time, the scar-faced man also released his whole body's aura. Impressively, he was at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. The other people in the dungeon all showed a look of fear. It could be seen that their strength was not as high as his. If there was no accident, they were also oppressed by him before, which was why they were so afraid. Was a pity? The scar-faced man was really thinking too highly of himself. Although in the outside world, a middle-stage nascent soul stage expert was high enough to be feared, and even in this dungeon, it was not enough to enter Lin Yi's eyes. He was the strongest middle-stage golden core stage expert who had a perfect breakthrough, and he had all kinds of trump cards, especially the super killer weapon that was the mixture of Dan fire and chi. Lin Yi had never been in existence that could be judged by common sense. Not to mention a golden core stage expert of the same level, even an early-stage nascent soul stage expert was nothing in front of him. As for a middle-stage nascent soul stage expert, it would only take a little more effort. The reason why Lin Yi was so shocked just now was not because of this scar-faced man, but because he actually found a familiar person he had been looking for recently, Lu Bianren. Never in his wildest dreams would Lin Yi have imagined that Lu Bianren would be locked up in this dungeon. No wonder there had been no news of him all this time. No wonder the Chechen escort agency's network hadn't been able to get a response at all. Lu Bianren had been locked up in this dungeon all year round. It would be a miracle if someone from the outside could find him. At the same time that Lin Yi found Lu Bianren was also looking at Lin Yi, but he did not know him. After all, Lin Yi was now wearing the Thousand Silk mask, and it was a completely unfamiliar face of a rude man. Compared to the other people who were gloating, there was no malice in Lu Bianren's eyes, and there was even a trace of pity. Every new person who came in would be bullied by this scar-faced man, and he was no exception. The scar-faced man was a master at the middle stage of the Yuanying realm, while Lu Bianren was only at the middle stage of the Gold Core realm. There was a gap of a whole realm, and he was not like Lin Yi, who could easily fight against opponents at a higher realm. In front of the scar-faced man, he could not even defend himself, let alone help a stranger. The only thing he could do was to sympathize with him. If he dared to jump out and fight openly, it was tantamount to seeking his own death. After all, this was a dungeon, and the guards outside basically did not care about what happened inside. If they really fought, he would die in vain. Seeing that Lin Yi still did not respond, the scar-faced man frowned and walked in front of Lin Yi in 2 steps. He shouted sternly, "I'm talking to you, did you hear me? Are you talking to me?" Only then did Lin Yi move his eyes away from Lu Bianren. He did not acknowledge him in public, but turned to look at the scar-faced man and asked calmly, "Nonsense, you are the only newcomer here. If I don't talk to you, do you think I'm talking to air? Are you fucking sick in the head?" The scar-faced man cursed and walked over. Chapter 4383. Arriving in front of Lin Yi, he spread out his hands and said, "Kid, since you're here, then you have to follow the rules here. Take out all the good stuff you have on you. I'll be frank with you first. If I'm not careful, I might accidentally kill someone. It's not good for anyone. Don't force me." "Sorry, I don't have anything on me." Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Then he looked at him disdainfully and said, "Even if I do, who do you think you are? You're being arrogant?" The man with the scar didn't get angry. Instead he laughed. The scar on his face became even more ferocious. He got closer and closer and sneered, "You're asking for it. Kid, you asked for it. Don't blame me for being merciless." As he finished speaking, the man with the scar suddenly reached out his hand to grab Lin Yi. He was about to search him. Everyone else in the dungeon was watching coldly. Many of them were even gloating. When they were first caught, they also had the same unfortunate experience. Now that they saw others following in their footsteps, not only did they not share the same hatred, but they also felt that it was reasonable. If Lin Yi wasn't bullied by the man with the scar, they would feel that it was unfair. From the beginning to the end, no one was optimistic about Lin Yi. The man with the scar was a master in the middle stage of the original level. This newcomer, although he hadn't shown his strength, didn't look like he was a match for the man with the scar. This wasn't purely looking down on Lin Yi. Although judging a book by its cover is often derogatory, in fact, most of the time, it is still reasonable. By Ho Wuxia is said to be born from the heart. In the world of cultivation, if a person practiced a profound martial art, his appearance and temperament would naturally change. Someone like Lin Yi, who looked like a boorish man at the moment, was definitely the kind of person who didn't practice well. His strength was generally not that strong. Even Lu Bianren didn't think that Lin Yi would win. A wise man knows when to fight when the odds are against him. Since he was not strong enough, it was better to be smart and accumulate his strength first. At this time there was only one word to describe him: unwise. However, the following scene caused everyone's jaws to drop. Even Lu Bianren could not recover from his shock for a long time. Without any warning, Lin Yi suddenly threw a frenzy 8 trigrams palm at the face of the man with the horizontal scar. Although the man with the horizontal scar had expected this guy to be a thorn in his side and had been guarding against him, when the time came, the man with the horizontal scar did not dare to attack. However, he found that he had no time to react at all. Under this mad fire 8 trigrams palm, a dignified master in the middle stage of the Yuanying stage was slapped 3 times in place, and his whole person was stunned. Immediately after, without waiting for the man with the scar to recover, Lin Yi raised his leg and performed another flaming 1,000 kicks, hitting the man with the scar in the middle of his back. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, the man with the horizontal scar was sprawled on the ground. It was imprinted firmly on the wall, causing the entire dungeon to tremble violently. Fortunately, it was reinforced by the defense formation. If not, it would have been impossible. Perhaps the entire dungeon would collapse from the tremors. The whole place was dead silent. Everyone's mouths were wide open, and they couldn't say a word for a long time. There was only the sound of people inhaling cold air. It was an expression of everyone's current mood. They had not been locked in this dungeon for a day or two. It had been at least a few months, and they had long gotten used to the bullying of the man with the horizontal scar. Strength was supreme and the fist was king. The man with the horizontal scar was the strongest. Naturally, he had the final say here and no one could resist. Of course, there were exceptions in the past. There were always hot-blooded people who didn't want to obey like this, but the end result was the same. No matter who dared to resist, they were eventually beaten half to death by the man with the horizontal scar, and from then on, they didn't even dare to let out a fart. The two guards outside did not care about any of this at all, and it further fueled the man with the horizontal scar's arrogance. They never thought that such a scene would happen today. The man with the horizontal scar this time kicked an iron plate and kicked himself until he bled. In an instant, everyone's fear of the man with the horizontal scar was completely transferred to Lin Yi. As for the originally arrogant man with the horizontal scar, after he forcefully dug himself out from the wall, he fell to the ground and spat out blood. Everyone looked at him with the same expression, and they were all very satisfied. After acting like a tyrant in the dungeon for so long, you deserve to have this day with the scar on your face. God really has eyes. You are also an original level cultivator? After spitting out a mouthful of blood, the man with the horizontal scar finally recovered a little. He raised his head and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. He was obviously just a boorish man. How could he be such an expert? Since when were original level cultivators so low class? Lin Yi looked at him disdainfully and coldly snorted. He neither admitted nor denied it. In the eyes of the others, the question of the man with the scar was simply nonsense. He, a master in the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, was almost crippled in one move. If this ruthless man was not a master in the nascent soul stage, could he be a master in the gold core stage? It was obvious that this new master was not only an original level cultivator, he was at least an expert above the middle stage original level. To deal with a scar-faced man like him, he was definitely more than enough. You. The man with the horizontal scar originally wanted to say a few harsh words to maintain the situation. In the end, when Lin Yi casually glanced at him, he immediately shrank his neck back. The imposing manner that he had summoned with great difficulty instantly dissipated. He was obviously scared to death, but he still wanted to show off. It was really funny to look at him. What about me? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth hung a faint smile. I surrender, I won't provoke you. However, don't be too delusional. If you think you can control me from now on, then you are very wrong. The man with the horizontal scar stood up shakily and pretended to be tough. I was just caught off guard just now. No matter what, I am still a middle stage original level cultivator. If we really fight to the death, both sides will suffer. Therefore I will take a step back. I won't provoke you and you won't provoke me either. We will mind our own business. Are you stupid? Lin Yi looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He suddenly waved his hand and suddenly released a chi bomb. This was something that he had secretly condensed at this moment. From the moment the man took the initiative to provoke him, Lin Yi did not plan to let this guy go easily. Since this guy took the initiative to come to him, he would at least cripple him if not kill him. Boom. There was another loud sound, and the man with the horizontal scar suddenly screamed in pain. He was once again embedded into the wall, and there was no movement for a long time. Everyone looked at each other. They thought that the man with the horizontal scar was killed just like that. They did not expect that after a while, the man with the horizontal scar suddenly cried out in pain. Trembling, he once again dug himself out of the wall. There was blood all over his head. His head had exploded into a bloody gourd. Looking at the miserable appearance of the man with the horizontal scar, even the people who had been bullied by him could not help but feel a trace of sympathy. Chapter 4384. Sure enough, evil people need to be tortured by evil people. The scar-faced man, who had always been domineering, was simply a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in front of this new fierce god. He had no power to resist and was simply being trampled on. He'd already suffered quite a bit of injury, and now that he'd been blasted by the chi bomb, he couldn't even stand up. His eyes were trembling as he looked at Lin Yi, and he didn't dare try to be brave anymore. Otherwise, he'd really have to report to the Yellow Springs Road if this demon did something like that again. It's easy for me to kill you, so if you want to keep your life, don't be an eyesore in front of me. Lin Yi said in a light tone. There was no exaggeration in these words. The true chi bomb just now was condensed too short. Secondly, it was not mixed with a fire bomb. Otherwise, even if he was a master in the middle stage of the Yuanying stage, no matter how strong the vitality of the scar-faced man was, he would still be blown into pieces. The scar-faced man heard the words and seemed to want to talk back. However, when he was glanced at by Lin Yi, he immediately shrunk back in embarrassment and did not dare to say a word. He had always thought of himself as a ruthless person. He was domineering outside and he was still the same in the dungeon. He had always been a prison tyrant. He was the only one who bullied others and no one had ever dared to defy him. Even those who did not have eyes would become obedient after being beaten up by him. He did not expect that today there would be someone even more fierce. Not only was the person stronger than him, the key was that he was ruthless and decisive. The scar-faced man could feel that this person was really a person who killed without blinking an eye. Perhaps this person would not kill innocent people like him, but this kind of person was even more terrifying. He really could not afford to provoke him. Suddenly he kicked such a big iron plate. The good days of being domineering had come to an end. Moreover, he was beaten into such a miserable state. The scar-faced man was very depressed. A wise man did not fight when the odds were against him. In the face of a fierce god like Lin Yi, even an evil person like him was trembling in panic. If it was not for the fact that he could not put down his face in front of so many people, he would have already knelt there and admitted defeat. I want to ask you a few questions and I hope you can tell me the truth. How did you get locked up here and how long have you been locked up here? Lin Yi pointed at the man with the horizontal scar and ordered, "Start with you one by one." Everyone's attention was once again focused on him. The man with the horizontal scar scowled miserably, not daring to defy Lin Yi's order. He had no choice but to support himself miserably while hanging his head and saying, "Oh no, I'm Sun Hengbiao. I'm a pirate near the dark cold sea region." Pirate? Lin Yi looked at him and asked, "Then how did you get in? Could it be that the Central Chamber of Commerce is so responsible that they would send people to purge you pirates?" In the seas of the South Continent, pirates of all kinds could be seen everywhere. Because there was no unified force to arrest them, they could swagger through the streets. Even if they were to talk about their no-cost business in the downtown area of the city, it didn't matter. Everyone was already used to it as long as they didn't snatch it from them. He wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Oh, that's not it. Oh no, I saw that this Central Chamber of Commerce was very profitable, so I wanted to rob their ship. I wanted to make a fortune, but I didn't expect that there were so many masters on the ship, and two mysterious ascending stage powerhouses came up. They beat me half to death and threw me here. Sun Hengbiao said with an embarrassed look. It was the first time the other people in the dungeon heard him talk about this, and they all had weird expressions on their faces. They looked at this guy as if they were looking at an idiot. The Central Chamber of Commerce was aggressive, and normal people would be too late to avoid it. This man with the horizontal scar actually dared to go to their door and rob their goods. He was lucky to not be beaten to death. Sun Hengbiao himself wore a hapless expression. In the dark cold sea region, the strength of a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator was definitely not weak. Together with a group of extremely vicious pirate subordinates, wherever he went, he would always be terror-stricken and invincible. Even if the other party also had a nascent soul stage powerhouse on their ship, they were not willing to fight him to the death. After all, it was not worth risking your life for a few spirit jades with such vicious pirates. However, who the hell would have thought that there would be a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse on the ship of the Central Chamber of Commerce? Since when were mysterious ascending stage powerhouses so worthless? Sun Hengbiao, actually went to rob a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse. If this wasn't bad luck, then what was? That situation was exactly the same as before. He thought that the other party was a soft persimmon that he could do anything he wanted, but before he could even be arrogant, he was beaten half to death with one slap. Everyone looked at Sun Hengbiao and couldn't help but laugh. This guy was indeed a blind idiot. He didn't learn from his previous encounter with a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse, and now he encountered this demon. He really deserved to be unlucky. How long have you been locked up? Lin Yi continued to ask. This. Sun Hengbiao frowned and thought for a moment before replying in full detail. It's been about 10 months. Among them, I'm the one who's been here the longest. Lin Yi heard this and looked at the others. Everyone nodded. Indeed, when they came in, Sun Hengbiao was already acting like a tyrant. So, you're the first to be caught? Lin Yi asked. No, that's not it. A lot of people came in earlier than me, but they were all taken out. Sun Hengbiao shook his head honestly. Pirate leaders like him were vicious, but if they really met a tough guy like Lin Yi, they would be more obedient than anyone else, because they believed more than anyone else in the rules of Jianghu where the strong ruled. Taken out? What do you mean let go? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little strange. The Central Chamber of Commerce was so secretive that they even captured guests like him, who had not done anything bad, without saying a word. They shouldn't be so kind as to easily let these people go unharmed, right? Many other people in the dungeon also pricked up their ears when they heard this. Sun Hengbiao had always bullied them and never mentioned anything about this. Even those who had been locked up for a few months did not know much about these things. Most of them were as clueless as Lin Yi and confused. It was rare for Sun Hengbiao to be forced to speak by this demon. This matter concerned everyone's future, so everyone naturally had to listen carefully. Chapter 4385. Human Experimentation? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Of course, the people on Sky Class Island didn't understand this term, but everyone in the common world knew about it. The Fire Wolf gang that Jianghu was in specialized in this. Since the appearance of the common world's department stores, Lin Yi already felt that this Central Chamber of Commerce was inextricably linked to the common world. He didn't expect it to be so. Now, there was a human experimentation. More and more evidence showed that this Central Chamber of Commerce was most likely developed from the common world. However, back then the common world's top forces gathered together, and with so many people, they barely managed to activate the teleportation circle and send them to Sky Class Island. Just what kind of power was behind this Central Chamber of Commerce? Not only did they successfully extend their tentacles to the Heavenly Stage Islands, but they also easily swept through the 5 Heavenly Stage Islands. It could be said that they were coming aggressively, showing an unstoppable state of madness. The key was that there were even profound ascending stage masters in charge, and it seemed that there were more than 1 or 2 of them. Even Lin Yi didn't dare to think too deeply about this power. It was too shocking. Yes, human experimentation. Anyway, after those people were taken out, none of them came back. I don't know if they died or something, but I don't think it's anything good. Plus, with my nascent soul mid-stage strength, no one here is stronger than me. So, every time they ask for someone, I'll let someone else take the blame. I won't go. Sun Hengbiao said proudly. Although he didn't have good eyesight, he was a pirate leader in the magic cold sea. He wasn't an idiot. Even if he didn't understand human experimentation, he could roughly tell if it was good or bad. Predicting good or bad luck sounded mysterious, but many masters who reached a certain level actually had this ability. It was just that the accuracy was different. Let others go? You call the shots in this dungeon. Those guards outside, those profound ascending stage masters listen to you? Lin Yi sneered. In front of a profound ascending stage master, you're nothing. Hearing that, the others sneered and mocked him. Sun Hengbiao's face instantly turned red. He was used to being arrogant, trying to flatter himself for no reason. Even though he had suffered a lot because of it, he couldn't change his character. With Sun Hengbiao's nascent soul mid-stage strength, he could act arrogantly in front of these people, but to the profound ascending stage masters outside, they were ants that could be easily crushed with 1 foot. They were ants that could be easily crushed to death with 1 foot. If they really wanted to take people out for human experiments, would they even discuss it with Sun Hengbiao? If Sun Hengbiao really had such a big face, why would he be locked up in this dungeon? Bullshit. That. Sun Hengbiao glared at everyone, but he didn't dare show his temper in front of Lin Yi. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, "They didn't want to talk to me at first, but after a while, I realized that they weren't interested in nascent soul masters. He took the others away one by one, but he didn't care about me at all. Look, there's another nascent soul cultivator over there. It's been a long time and he hasn't been taken away." Following Sun Hengbiao's finger, in the corner of the dungeon, Lin Yi saw an ordinary-looking man in a green robe. He was meditating where he was. Yes, that's right. The man in green saw Lin Yi's gaze and nodded quickly. That was because he was quite strong. Sun Hengbiao never provoked him, so he naturally wouldn't provoke Sun Hengbiao. But this new fiend could beat Sun Hengbiao into such a miserable state. It was obvious that he was not to be trifled with. Facing Lin Yi's question, of course, he didn't dare to neglect it. That's strange. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He had heard a little about human experimentation. It was actually like doing a scientific experiment. No matter what the purpose was, in order to find the most effective method, a large number of human samples would be taken. And the human samples had to be involved at all levels. It didn't make sense that nascent soul stage masters were excluded. Unless, the Central Chamber of Commerce's human experimentation research didn't include nascent soul stage masters, but specifically targeted golden core stage masters. Hearing Sun Hengbiao's words, everyone else in the dungeon started to panic. Apart from the green-clothed man in the nascent soul realm, they were all experts in the gold core realm. Didn't that mean that they would be dragged out to do some human experiments one day? Everyone knew that it was definitely not something good. Otherwise, the Central Chamber of Commerce wouldn't have captured them and locked them up here. Maybe after the human experimentation, they wouldn't even have a whole corpse left. Everyone here was like pigs waiting to be slaughtered. I've been here for a long time and I've never caused trouble for them. I've even made the people in the dungeon obedient so they turn a blind eye to me. Sun Hengbiao said a little proudly. Now that he was trapped in the dungeon and couldn't see the light of day, it naturally couldn't compare to the scenery outside. But to be able to find a sense of superiority from these people was also a rare psychological comfort. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't find the word strange. In order to manage a prison full of practitioners, they needed a prison tyrant to help them suppress the prisoners, other than strict monitoring. An existence like Sun Hengbiao wasn't a bad thing for the guards outside. In fact, they were more than happy to see it happen. So, the other Golden Core stage masters have all been taken away? Lin Yi asked thoughtfully. Yes. Anyway, those who came earlier than me have all been taken away. Those who came later than me have also been taken away. Sun Hengbiao nodded. His gaze swept across the other people in the dungeon, and he threatened them maliciously. These people, it's only a matter of time. Hee. Everyone couldn't help but shrink their necks in fear. Even Lu Bianren, who was always calm, was obviously flustered. No matter how strong a master was, he still couldn't get rid of the fear of the unknown. However, as a Golden Core stage master, Lin Yi wasn't too worried at the moment. First, he knew what human experimentation was. Second, compared to the others here, he was stronger. Naturally, he was more confident that he could deal with all kinds of threats. Apart from this, what else do you know? Lin Yi continued to ask. Sun Hengbiao was the one who had been here the longest, so he must know the most. Chapter 4386. Really? Lin Yi frowned and asked. Unspecified currency. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't seem to believe him, he quickly raised his hand and swore, it's true, I swear to the heavens, I really don't know. Although those profound ascension practitioners turned a blind eye to me, they never talked to me and I didn't dare to ask. One wrong question might kill me. Okay, next. Lin Yi did not continue to make things difficult for Sun Hengbiao, and immediately turned to the people next to him. Why were they caught, how long were they locked up here, and asked them one by one. Although everyone was a little puzzled as to why Lin Yi did this, but with Sun Hengbiao's experience there, they would not dare to provoke such a cruel master. Moreover, it was just asking 2 questions. It was not a big deal, and they were not like Sun Hengbiao who would rob treasures at every turn. Naturally, they were happy to cooperate. Everyone asked one by one, and everyone had different reasons. Some had a conflict with the Central Chamber of Commerce because they were buying things, some had a drink and went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to cause trouble, and some owed the Central Chamber of Commerce spiritual jades. There were all kinds of strange reasons, no matter what they could think of, no matter what kind of messy reasons. Some even made people not know whether to laugh or cry. But all of them had one thing in common, and that was that they were all related to the Central Chamber of Commerce. After asking around, it was finally Lu Bianren's turn. Lin Yi deliberately asked them one by one. In addition to wanting to understand as much as possible, he actually wanted to ask Lu Bianren the most, but he did not want to expose his identity, so he could not name him alone, so he could only use this method to deceive people. The two faced each other at close range. Lu Bianren felt that Lin Yi looked familiar, as if he had seen him before. Of course, he had never seen this rough and boorish face before, but Lin Yi's temperament was really familiar and a little strange. The strange thing was, Lin Yi's temperament really did not match his rough and boorish appearance. Most people would not feel it if they did not look carefully, but now that they felt it at such a close distance, they would feel out of place. In the past, when Lu Bianren was in the welcoming pavilion because his authority was taken away, he had nothing to do. Therefore, he had been studying all kinds of ancient books, especially the theory of face-to-face physiognomy. As the saying goes, one's appearance is born from one's heart. Lin Yi's current rough and boorish appearance was completely incompatible with his temperament. For Lu Bianren, who was proficient in physiognomy, this was simply subverting common sense. It was not scientific at all. However, Lu Bianren did not know that this fiend was Lin Yi. He was just as respectful as everyone else, not daring to be neglectful. I originally went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to gather information, but I don't know why or how I offended them, but I was inexplicably captured. Even now, I still haven't figured out the whole story. Lu Bianren smiled bitterly. Everyone was in disbelief regardless of the reason, whether it was a big or small matter. When they were arrested, they had at least offended the Central Chamber of Commerce. This Lu Bianren was naturally the same. How could he be arrested just for gathering information? These words were not entirely true. He must be hiding something. This was everyone's first reaction. However, Lu Bianren was telling the truth. This was the truth. Up until now he was still confused and had no idea what was going on. Lin Yi was also a little surprised, but he did not think that Lu Bianren was lying. Because Lu Bianren had always been open and above board, and he was an upright person. He would not deliberately fabricate and deceive for this kind of thing. What information did you go to gather? Lin Yi continued to ask without batting an eyelid. This, can I not say? Lu Bianren was a little embarrassed. Everyone was suddenly in an uproar, and Sun Hengbiao looked like he was looking at a dead man. This fiend in front of him could even beat a ruthless person like him half to death. You are just a golden core expert and you dare to put on airs in front of him? It's just a question that doesn't matter. It's not like he will cut your flesh. Is it necessary to provoke such a ruthless person for such a small matter? Even if there is something unspeakable in it, can't you just make up a lie? Why be so direct? Isn't this courting death? However, this was Lu Bianren's style of doing things. If he could say it, he would say it. If he didn't want to say it, he would be straightforward. It was indeed easy to make up a lie, but if he would do that, then he would not be Lu Bianren. Lu Bianren did not have any friendship with these people in the dungeon. Everyone was gloating, waiting for the fiend Lin Yi to flip out and watch the show. However, Lin Yi's reaction was far beyond their expectations. All right then, forget it. Lin Yi nodded calmly and then moved on to the next person. Such a calm reaction made everyone wonder if they were blind, especially Sun Hengbiao, who almost cursed it out loud on the spot. When he was dealing with him just now, this demon god was ruthless. There was no way he was going to be so easy to negotiate. Even Lu Bianren himself felt a little surprised. He was prepared to receive the other party's anger, but who would have thought that it would really be so easy? With just a few words it was over. If it were anyone else, this person in front of him would probably have given them a kick. Lu Bianren could not help but wonder if this strange sense of familiarity was really not an illusion. Had he really dealt with this person before? Everyone looked at each other but did not dare to make a sound. They could only watch as Lin Yi continued to ask questions with a belly full of questions. Finally, after asking everyone in the dungeon, Lin Yi calmly found a place to sit cross-legged. Coincidentally, it was right next to Lu Bianren. This time, even if everyone did not know what was going on, they began to understand. This fiend, who was even more ruthless than Sun Hengbiao, was obviously treating Lu Bianren differently. In this dungeon, Lu Bianren had always been quiet, and had never done anything out of line. In everyone's eyes, he had always been the kind of person who was easy to bully. But now, they had to think about it a little more in the future. Lu Bianren was indeed easy to bully, but if he made the fiend next to him unhappy, then he would not be able to find his grave even if he cried. In this way, not only was everyone surprised and suspicious, even Lu Bianren himself was wondering if he had dealt with this person before. He did not look familiar, but his temperament was indeed very familiar. Chapter 4387. Although this dungeon did not give people the feeling that the guards were not so strict, and there was no torture at first glance, it still felt quite peaceful and there was no sense of tension, but people with discerning eyes could see that this was definitely a place of trouble, and they could not stay for long. There were many masters in the Central Chamber of Commerce. If they were really selected to do human experiments, then it would be too late. At that time, there must be a profound ascending stage master. Even with Lin Yi's trump card, it would be difficult for him to do anything in front of a ridiculously strong profound ascending stage master. The success rate of taking the opportunity to escape may be less than 10%. Therefore, if he wanted to save his life, the only way was to escape from this dark dungeon before he was selected to do human experiments. Although the dungeon was blessed by a protective formation, and the walls were extremely hard, even with the destructive power of a large number of nascent soul stage masters, it would be difficult to break it. But in Lin Yi's view, as long as his Dan Fire True Chi bomb was condensed long enough, he still had a great chance of blowing it up. However, it was not difficult to blow up the dungeon, but it could not guarantee that the people inside would not be injured. He could not care less about other people's lives, but it was not easy to find Lu Bianren, and Lin Yi could not ignore his life. And if he wanted to successfully escape from the prison, the most difficult point was not to destroy the dungeon, but the guards outside. When Lin Yi was caught by Ma Tianlang before, he saw two guards outside, and both of them were extraordinary masters. Lin Yi felt that they were at least at the peak of the late stage of nascent soul stage, and there might even be a profound ascending stage master among them. If it was before, letting a profound ascending stage master be a guard, this kind of thing was simply a fantasy, and Lin Yi would never believe it. But after experiencing today's events, even if he did not believe it, he had to believe it. Since a profound ascending stage master could be a follower of others, then it did not seem too strange to be a guard, right? prepare for the best. Since he had decided to break out of the prison, he had to consider the worst-case scenario. Otherwise, if he acted rashly, not only would he not be able to escape, but he would also be captured and put under strict surveillance. He might even be sent to be used as a human experiment. That would truly be crying without tears. Therefore, before completely probing out the situation outside, Lin Yi would not act rashly. Right now the only choice was, he would act according to the circumstances. However, while Lin Yi was silently calculating, he also began to slowly compress and condense the super alchemic fire true chi bomb. Even if he decided to act according to the circumstances, he had to first prepare this super killer weapon in advance. Otherwise, if the opportunity really came, it would be fleeting, and it would be too late to compress it at the last minute. Lin Yi didn't say anything. Everyone else in the dungeon, everyone including Lu Bianren and Sun Hengbiao, held their breaths and dared not speak, fearing that they might attract Lin Yi's attention and disgust. It was not worth it to be beaten half to death by this demon for no reason. In such a dark silence, after who knows how long, the dungeon door suddenly opened, and two people walked in one after another. Lin Yi carefully looked at the two without a trace, and he could be sure that these two were the guards he saw before. Perhaps it was to deter the people in the dungeon. To avoid some unnecessary trouble, the momentum of these two people was not restrained at all. The surging and powerful aura was above everyone's head, making everyone tremble in fear, not daring to have the slightest disloyalty. For the first time, Lin Yi clearly felt the strength of these two people. He couldn't help but be shocked, and at the same time secretly felt a little scared. Of these two people, one was a peak Yuanying late-stage master, which was not too much to worry about, but the other was a real profound ascending stage master. Fortunately, he had prepared for the worst before. Otherwise, if he really broke out of the dungeon, Lin Yi estimated that he would be a corpse now. Whose turn is it this time? The peak Yuanying late-stage master pouted and looked at Sun Hengbiao, while the profound ascending stage master stood on the side, bored. For a super existence of his level, it was already a waste of talent to guard such a small dungeon. If it wasn't for the fact that human experimentation was the most important thing in the entire organization, he would not be willing to stay in this place at all. Of course, he didn't need to worry about trivial things like sample extraction. Not only him, but even the peak Yuanying late-stage master was too lazy to pay attention to these people in the dungeon. Basically, according to the order of first come, first served, and let the prison tyrant Sun Hengbiao help decide. Anyway, as long as the samples were provided on time, nothing else mattered. This one. Sun Hengbiao quickly pointed at someone. Lin Yi suddenly frowned. The person Sun Hengbiao pointed at was actually Lu Bianren, who was sitting next to him. It wasn't easy to find Lu Bianren, but in the end, Lu Bianren was taken away for human experimentation before he could even recognize him. From then on, his life and death were unknown. Was there anything more fucked up than this in the world? Lin Yi's mind turned quickly, and he immediately made up his mind. If it really didn't work, then he could only release the ultimate weapon now. With the huge destructive power of the Super Dan Fire True Chi Bomb, even if the opponent was a profound ascending stage master, it should be difficult for them to react quickly if they were caught off guard. Taking advantage of the chaos, he would quickly escape with Lu Bianren. However, the success rate of doing so was not high. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Lin Yi didn't want to take such a risky move. He immediately stared at Sun Hengbiao fiercely. Although Sun Hengbiao was a blind idiot, he had suffered so much at the hands of Lin Yi, and it had already left a shadow in his heart. As soon as he saw Lin Yi's unfriendly gaze, his heart suddenly skipped a beat, and his back suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. According to the order of first come, first served, it was indeed Lu Bianren's turn this time. But looking at the meaning of this demon, it was obvious that he didn't want Lu Bianren to be taken away. If he disobeyed him, he was afraid that even the half of his life that he had painstakingly picked up would be buried together with Lu Bianren. Oh no, I remembered wrong. It's this one. Sun Hengbiao quickly changed his words and pointed at a person at the door. He wanted to point at Lin Yi, but unfortunately, Lin Yi had just been caught today, and the guards must still have an impression of him. Moreover, this was a nascent soul stage master who was stronger than him. They didn't want him at all. Even if he pointed at him, it would be useless. Later, when the guards left, Lin Yi would definitely kill him first. If he knew that Lin Yi was actually just a middle stage gold core stage master, Sun Hengbiao would probably cry and faint in the toilet. Chapter 4388. The unlucky guy who was pointed at by Sun Hengbiao suddenly shouted, "It's a mistake. Not me. Not me. Cut the crap. Leave by yourself or I'll pinch you to death." The guards impatiently stretched out their palms, and the man didn't dare to make another sound. He could only obediently follow the two guards and leave. Watching the dungeon door slowly close, everyone finally let out a sigh of relief, especially Lu Bianren, whose life was hanging by a thread just now. He let out a long breath. If he was taken away by the guards for some kind of human experiment, he might have a slim chance of survival, or he might not even have a slim chance of survival. He would definitely die. While everyone was calming down, Lin Yi was overjoyed. The moment he opened the door, he clearly sensed that there were no other guards other than the two masters guarding the door. Thinking about it, it made sense. A super master at the profound ascension stage and a master at the peak of the late nascent soul stage were more than enough to guard this small dungeon. Any more manpower would be a waste. There was no need. And what made Lin Yi even more overjoyed was that the two guards actually escorted the guy out together. Although he didn't know the destination, as long as the two left the dungeon, even if it was just for a short while, it would be a godsend opportunity for Lin Yi. He secretly estimated the time. When the two guards left, there should be no one outside. This was a golden opportunity. If he missed this opportunity, when Sun Hengbiao found out that he was a master at the gold core stage, he might not have such an opportunity again. If you don't want to die, stand behind me. Lin Yi yelled without warning as he stood up abruptly, giving the people in the dungeon a big fright. They looked at each other, speechless. The guards had just left. What was this demon god doing? What was he doing? What the hell was he doing now? No, big brother. I really didn't mean to target Lu Bianren. It was his turn this time, and I changed my words at the last minute. Please spare my life, spare my life. Sun Hengbiao was so scared that he peed his pants. He thought that Lin Yi was going to make him pay for what he did. Lin Yi glanced at this guy and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said with a cold face, "Cut the crap. If you don't want to die, stand behind me. Don't you understand me? Then don't blame me if you lose your life." "You're not going to kill me?" Sun Hengbiao breathed a sigh of relief and rolled up, scrambling to stand behind Lin Yi. The others didn't know what was going on, but they didn't dare disobey this demon. Even someone as strong as Sun Hengbiao was beaten into submission, let alone people like them who were far weaker than Sun Hengbiao. After looking at each other, they all walked behind Lin Yi. Lu Bianren stood next to Lin Yi and was also very surprised. He didn't know what this demon had to do with him, and he didn't know what this demon was planning. But he didn't dare to ask and could only do the same as Sun Hengbiao and the others. He looked on anxiously from the side. "Use your true chi to protect your body, or I won't care if you die." Lin Yi shouted again, and the super alchemy fire true chi bomb, which he had been condensing and compressing, slowly appeared on his palms. Although it hadn't exploded yet. But the horrifying aura that leaked out from it, even if it was just a little bit, was enough to make everyone's heart jump. They looked at Lin Yi as if they were looking at a monster, trembling with fear and terror. They didn't know what kind of move it was and they didn't know how it was condensed, but that didn't hinder their perception of danger. Such a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, it was definitely not a joke. Even if they were all experts above the golden core stage, once they were affected by it, they would die without a doubt. This demon was indeed a demon that no one could afford to offend. At this point, everyone had more or less guessed Lin Yi's intention. They were all anxious and shocked, but they also couldn't help but look hopeful. No matter who it was, being locked up in this sunless dungeon and living in fear every day, wondering if they would be the next subject of the human experiment after a long time, they would be scared to the point of mental illness. If there was a chance to escape from the dungeon, even if there was only a slim chance of survival, no one would let it go easily. Even Sun Hengbiao was the same. The human experiment didn't need nascent soul experts now, but who knew what would happen in the future? In such a troublesome place, of course they had to escape as soon as possible, or they wouldn't even know when they would die. Everyone hurriedly activated their true chi to protect themselves, and raised their heads, waiting for Lin Yi's next move. But hope was hope. Many of them had been locked up for a long time, and to a greater extent they were just there to watch the show. They didn't believe that Lin Yi could succeed. After all, Lin Yi was definitely not the first to have the idea of breaking out of the prison. Many people, including Sun Hengbiao, had the same idea, and some had even put it into practice. But the result was obvious: they had all failed. The dungeon was reinforced by a special protective formation, so it was extremely sturdy. Normal nascent soul experts couldn't break it at all, unless they were profound ascension experts. But this demon, although brutal, could beat up Sun Hengbiao, a middle nascent soul expert. He was indeed very strong. But to say that he was a profound ascension giant, that was too much. They were hopeful, but they didn't think much of it. This was the mentality of the people in the dungeon. But when Lin Yi suddenly made his move, their eyes instantly changed. Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook and everyone couldn't even count how many times there were. Maybe it was the shocking effect of the super bomb, or maybe it was the chain reaction, but everyone just felt like the sky was falling and the earth was cracking, as if it was the end of the world, and they were panic-stricken. Even though many people had protected themselves with true qi, they were still hurt by the aftershocks. Some were even seriously injured and almost died on the spot. It's open. It's really open. Sun Hengbiao suddenly pointed forward and shouted in ecstasy. In the chaos, although everyone couldn't hear what he was shouting, they looked in the direction of his finger, and their expressions immediately froze. The dungeon had not been completely destroyed, but there was no doubt that the protective array on the walls had been destroyed. Because not far in front of them, in a place where the sun could not be seen, a ray of sunlight that had not shone for a long time suddenly shone through. Some were in disbelief, some were shocked, some were overjoyed, and some were even sobbing. At this moment, everyone's expressions in the dungeon were all very colorful. Chapter 4389. The little bit of luck and hope in these people's hearts had long been eroded and buried by the boundless darkness. They thought that this might be the end of their lives, but they never dreamed that there would be a day where they could see the light of day again. Let's go. Lin Yi suddenly pulled Lu Bianren and rushed forward with his head down. Everything was within his expectations. The Super Dan Fire Jinqi bomb had been brewing for so long, if it still couldn't blow up the dungeon, then it would be really strange. Lu Bianren was originally shocked like the others, but when he was suddenly pulled by Lin Yi, he sprained his ankle and fell to the ground. He even ate a mouthful of dust. But Lin Yi didn't care about that, he just dragged him and rushed out. The opportunity was fleeting. Although the dungeon had been successfully blown up, as Lin Yi had calculated before, this was only the most basic and simple first step. Whether they could successfully escape or not, the next step was the key. The explosion was earth-shattering. Even an ordinary person, even if they were 100 miles away, would be able to detect it, not to mention that the other party was at the profound ascension stage. Once they noticed it, they would definitely rush over here. If they couldn't escape before they arrived, then all their previous efforts would be in vain. Watching Lin Yi run away with Lu Bianren, Sun Hengbiao and the others finally reacted. After looking at each other, they hurriedly rushed forward with all their strength. Even though their Jinqi protection was not strong enough, they were still screaming and limping as they ran. Being locked in the dungeon meant that they could only sit and wait to be taken away for human experiments. If they didn't run now, when would they? After blowing up the broken dungeon door, Lin Yi dragged Lu Bianren with one hand and was the first to rush out of the dungeon and see the light of day again. There was a tunnel between the dungeon and the Demon Lung City. But at this time they were running for their lives. Whoever rushed into the tunnel would be an idiot. The other party could just block them from the front and back, and they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. Therefore his only choice was to escape to the open space outside. Looking around, all he could see were towering mountains and lofty ridges. The mountain ranges were continuous, rising and falling. It was actually a huge mountain range. This was beyond Lin Yi's expectation. He had thought that the Devil Lung Sea region was only the size of a palm, and that he would be able to see the sea at a glance once he left the Devil Lung City. He had never thought that there would be such a majestic mountain range in front of him. Then Sun Hengbiao and the others rushed out from behind. All of them looked at the scene around them, unable to conceal the ecstasy on their faces. They thought that they had escaped just like that and they could finally relax. However, Lin Yi did not dare to hesitate. His divine sense was extremely powerful and sensitive, enough to surpass many original infant-stage cultivators. Lin Yi could clearly feel that he was within a radius of less than 5 miles. There were at least 4 or 5 powerful auras approaching from all directions. Among them, there was the terrifying aura of a mysterious ascending stage giant. Even if it was Lin Yi. Otherwise, he would have already escaped when he was in the Central Chamber of Commerce. Why wait until now? The only chance was when the mysterious ascending stage giant rushed back. A mere 5 miles distance. For a mysterious ascending stage giant, it was just a matter of a thought. At most, it would only take 3 breaths for them to appear above their heads. It was a race against time. Lin Yi did not even dare to breathe. He dragged Lu Bianren, who was still in a daze, and chose a direction where there were no experts around, and immediately ran with all his might. Sun Hengbiao and the others immediately reacted, and without saying a word, they followed Lin Yi and ran. When faced with the threat of death, people's potential was absolutely beyond imagination. Although most of the people here were only golden core stage cultivators, when they began to run with all their might, their speed was not to be underestimated. Perhaps even some original infant stage cultivators could not compare to them. Split up or we will all die. Lin Yi yelled when he saw these people following him like they were grasping at straws, trying to save their lives. With so many people running together, the target was too big. Any mysterious ascending stage cultivator could easily catch up with them, and even Lin Yi himself would not be able to escape. Only by splitting up and running would they have a chance. After all, these people in the Central Chamber of Commerce were powerful, but they seemed to be walking the elite route. Lin Yi had not seen many small fries so far, and there were 40 to 50 people here. Once they split up and ran, no matter how strong the experts in the Central Chamber of Commerce were, they would not be able to split up. The most likely result was that the unlucky ones would be caught first, but the lucky ones would have a chance to escape from under their noses. Anyone could understand such a simple logic. After Lin Yi shouted, Sun Hengbiao and the others immediately split up. In terms of pure strength, no one here, including Lin Yi, could escape from the hands of a mysterious ascending stage cultivator. So their only choice was to bet on their luck. Seeing that everyone had scattered, Lin Yi was relieved, but he still did not dare to neglect. He fully used the butterfly subtle steps, coupled with the speed bonus of the gale-chasing lightning boots, and the true chi ejection technique he mastered after coming to the heavenly stage island. His speed was instantly pushed to the extreme, leaving only a series of blurred figures flashing quickly in the dense forest. With such amazing speed, how was this running? It was simply flying. Unless it was a freak like the Will of Heaven, ordinary nascent soul stage masters could not catch up at all. So as long as he was not the first target of a mysterious ascending stage master, the probability of Lin Yi successfully escaping was at least more than 70%. Lin Yi dragged the confused Lu Bianren as he took the lead, and in less than 3 breaths, he heard cries of pain from behind him. He didn't even need to turn his head to look to know that someone had been caught by the masters of the Central Chamber of Commerce. As for what happened to them, whether they were dead or alive, that was something he didn't know. However, none of this had anything to do with Lin Yi. He had done all he could. Those people weren't strong enough, they weren't lucky enough to escape, so they couldn't blame anyone else. Even if they didn't run, they would still die in the dungeon. Lin Yi gave them a chance, so what could they do if they didn't take it? Without stopping, Lin Yi dragged Lu Bianren all the way. After rushing out of the vast mountains, there was a boundless sea in front of him. His luck was not bad, at least he was not targeted by a mysterious ascending stage master. As for the others, even if they noticed and wanted to catch up in the face of Lin Yi's terrifying speed, most of them were powerless. Chapter 4390. Lin Yi was not afraid of running out of energy. As long as his body could take it, he could run until the sky turned dark. On the contrary, Lu Bianren, who had been dragged all the way, was dizzy. Although he was also a middle-stage gold core master, Lu Bianren had never experienced such a thrilling speed. Plus, he wasn't in control of his own body from start to finish. He was just being swung around by Lin Yi, and his stomach was already churning. He hadn't had a proper meal for a couple of months in the dungeon, and Lu Bianren was throwing up. Looking at Lu Bianren, who had always been calm and unshakable, with a face full of pain and vomiting, Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, he did not have time to stop and let Lu Bianren breathe. Even if he wanted to vomit, he had to wait until he was out of danger. Regardless of the consequences, Lin Yi ran along the coastline for a full 6 hours. Finally, he saw the city wall of Emolung City. There was no aura of a powerful master behind him. They must have given up on chasing after him. After all, Lin Yi wasn't a serious criminal to the Central Merchant Group. He'd only been caught by accident on the 3rd floor, and those people probably didn't even remember what Lin Yi looked like. Now that they were chasing after so many people, it wasn't surprising that they'd missed Lin Yi and Lu Bianren, and there was no need to get so many people involved. After entering the downtown area, Lin Yi immediately restrained his aura. He was no different from an ordinary passerby. Lu Bianren, on the other hand, had already lost his aura. Other than a slight stumble, no one would pay attention to him. After a few turns, Lin Yi brought Lu Bianren to the inn where the Equal of Heaven escort agency was staying. Without saying anything, he returned to his room. The waiter next to him did not think much. After all, there were so many people coming and going. It was impossible for them to remember the appearance of all the guests. Since they could open the door, it meant that they were serious guests. There was nothing to be suspicious about. Only then did Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. Even if he knew that the other party was unlikely to mobilize a large force, but the pressure brought by a profound ascending stage master was really not a small matter. Even Lin Yi was not relaxed. As for Lu Bianren, although he had been dragged along by Lin Yi the whole way and had not exerted any strength on his own, his current condition was much worse than Lin Yi's. He had already been on the verge of collapsing along the way, and now that he had relaxed, he was even more battered and exhausted. He almost fainted on the spot. Standing at the side and watching Lu Bianren's dizzy appearance, Lin couldn't help but laugh. Lu Bianren had always been someone who would remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. After knowing him for so long, this was the first time he had seen Lu Bianren so embarrassed. "Thank you for saving my life, great hero." After feeling dizzy for a while, Lu Bianren recovered a little and quickly cupped his hands to thank Lin Yi. Although he was puzzled, he knew that this Wu Fu who he had never met before was trying to save him, so he did not resist at all. Otherwise, even if he wasn't a match for him, once he really struggled, even Lin Yi would find it difficult to deal with. "No need, this is what I should do." Lin Yi smiled and waved his hand. "What I should do?" Lu Bianren looked at Lin Yi with a strange expression, but he didn't rashly ask for details. Instead, he said, "Dare I ask, great hero, what is your intention in bringing me here? If there is nothing else, then I will take my leave first. I'll take my leave first. I'll repay you for saving my life in the future." "Don't be in a hurry to leave." Lin Yi reached out to stop him. With a mischievous face he asked, "There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Aren't you curious at all? Don't you want to ask who I am and why I went out of my way to save you?" "I'm indeed curious. If it is convenient, I hope you will not be stingy with your guidance." Lu Bianren's heart immediately sank. Could it be that this guy came with ill intentions? He had just escaped from the wolf's den and entered the tiger's cave? Lin Yi smiled mysteriously and didn't answer. He reached out and slowly took off the thousand silk mask. Seeing Lin Yi's original appearance, Lu Bianren, who was originally a little nervous, was immediately stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. You are Lin Yi." Lu Bianren couldn't help but widen his eyes in surprise and joy. Never in his dreams would he have thought that this powerful and vicious demon was actually Lin Yi. "Ah, senior brother Lu, I trust you have been well since we last met." Lin Yi smiled and cupped his fists. "So it really is you. You gave me such a fright." Lu Bianren's heart finally fell to the ground. His whole person seemed to deflate and he slumped on the stool without a care for his image. He had been on tenterhooks, but since the other party was Lin Yi, he naturally had nothing to worry about. Forgive me. The Jianghu is dangerous. I wore a mask to change my appearance just in case." Lin Yi smiled and sat down with him. He poured a cup of tea for Lu Bianren and himself. "Yes, this should be done. If I had been as careful as you, perhaps I wouldn't have ended up in this situation today." Lu Bianren sighed and drank the tea in one gulp. Then he looked up and down at Lin Yi again. He clicked his tongue in wonder and asked doubtfully, "Junior brother Lin Yi, why are you here?" Lu Bianren really had a stomach full of questions now. Just a year ago, Lin Yi was still a newcomer who had just been teleported here from the mortal world. Now, in just a short year, he had actually grown into a ruthless person who could even beat Sun Hengbiao, a mid-stage nascent soul expert. Wasn't this growth too fast? Especially the move that collapsed the dungeon just now. Its power was strong enough to destroy heaven and earth. Lu Bianren even suspected that it had exceeded the level of a nascent soul expert. With such a terrifying and heaven-defying growth speed, his junior brother's aptitude was not just 1 in 10,000. Even saying that it was 1 in 100 million was definitely underestimating him. I became an inner disciple 2 months ago and accepted a trial mission, which was to capture the evil cultivator Wu Baoliang. His most recent appearance was in the Weiqin Sea of the southern continent, so I came here." Lin Yi answered. "Junior brother Lin Yi, you're already an inner disciple?" Lu Bianren was slightly stunned when he heard the words, but then he understood. "That's right. With your current strength you can even beat Sun Hengbiao. Not to mention being an inner disciple, you're more than enough to be an elder of the 3 pavilions." In the 3 pavilions of the North Island, a nascent soul expert had the opportunity to become an elder. With Lin Yi's current strength he could even crush most of them. Chapter 4391. Haha, it's a win-win situation. Senior brother Lu, you've been missing for so long, and senior brother Ku and the others are worried about you. I heard from the master of the Xinjiang Pavilion that you were here, and I saw a mission like this, so I came to try my luck. I didn't think I'd actually run into one." Lu Bianren pointed at Lin Yi and sighed. He was touched, but at the same time he couldn't help but blame himself. "Back in the Welcome Pavilion, I had the title of 3rd Pavilion Master for nothing, but I couldn't help you at all. Now I have caused you to worry for me. I can't feel at ease." "Senior brother Lu, that's where you're wrong. It's rare for us to get along so well and we're all on the same side. If we don't do anything when you suddenly disappear, wouldn't that be too inhumane?" Linny said disapprovingly. You are right, but you don't have to take such a risk for me. What if you get yourself into trouble? Then I won't be able to forgive myself even if I die 1,000 times. Lu Bianren said with lingering fear. Didn't I successfully get away? Anyway, the ending is a happy one. Besides, I came here for the trial mission, not to look for you. Senior brother Lu, don't take it to heart. Linny smiled. All right. Lu Bianren nodded helplessly. However, with his temperament, how could he let go of such a great kindness so easily? He just kept it in his heart and firmly remembered it. Then he asked, by the way, how is Kazanal now? Senior brother Ku is now the 3rd pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion. He has Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai and Li Jingming to help him. There should be no problem. Linny replied. Ku Zhongla became the 3rd pavilion master? The pavilion master of Xinjiang Pavilion nodded? Lu Bianren was shocked. The Welcoming Pavilion's 3rd pavilion lord position, no matter who it was, had to be approved by the Clear Cloud Pavilion's pavilion lord, Yu Xinjiang. Merely relying on his own hard work would not be able to gain Yu Xinjiang's recognition. Needless to say, Linny must have contributed to this. Lu Bianren looked at Linny in shock. As the pavilion master of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Yu Xinjiang's judgment of people was not inferior to that of Shanghai Tianhua. This junior brother of his was truly a heaven-defying genius for Yu Xinjiang to appreciate him so much. If he knew that Linny was not only appreciated by Yu Xinjiang, but even Shanghai Tianhua, the Soaring Pavilion's pavilion master, attached great importance to him and even treated him the same way as Ramjie back then, Lu Bianren would probably faint on the spot. That's right, so we're all fine. Senior brother Lu, you don't have to worry. Linny nodded and asked, let's talk about you. How did you get captured by the Central Chamber of Commerce? This question had been asked in the dungeon before. At that time, Lu Bianren did not know that it was Linny, so he refused to elaborate. Linny naturally did not force him. After all, there were too many people, but now there was no such concern. Junior brother Linny, since you know about me from Pavilion Master Yu, then you should know what I'm doing here, right? Lu Bianren did not answer but asked. I know. Senior brother Lu, you came here in the name of a task. If I'm not wrong, it must be to find the news of Deputy Pavilion Master Yao. Linny nodded. Yes, I came to the South Continent this time. It's to inquire about Deputy Pavilion Master Yao Luanzhen. Lu Bianren said with a faint gaze, as far as I know, he also disappeared in this South Continent Sea, and before that, he actually came here to participate in a trial reward task organized by a person, to repair an array. Repair array? Linny was surprised. This was the first time he heard Yao Luanzhen's full name, so he naturally did not know much about it. He could not help but ask curiously, so, Deputy Pavilion Master Yao is an array master? On the Heaven Stage Island, compared to the highly respected alchemy, casting was already considered an unpopular industry. As for array masters, it was even more unpopular than casting. Basically, no one would talk about it. In fact, looking at the 5 great Heaven Stage Islands, not to mention array masters, even decent array masters were rare. Even if there were, it was only a very shallow protective array. As for the complex and exquisite teleportation arrays, 9 out of 10 were left behind many years ago. Until now, Linny had never heard of anyone who could make a teleportation array. It can't be said that he is an array master. In this era, the people who can really become an array master have basically disappeared. Although Deputy Pavilion Master Yao has always been very interested in this aspect and has been spending a lot of effort to study it, he can only be regarded as proficient in it. He can't personally arrange a truly exquisite and profound array. However, in terms of maintaining and repairing array, he is quite experienced. Lu Bianren explained. I see. Linny took a deep look at Lu Bianren. Listening to it, this Deputy Pavilion Master Yao and Lu Bianren were actually the same type of people. They didn't have great ambitions, but they both liked to ponder and research on their own. It was no wonder that the two of them got together. After all, birds of a feather flock together. Deputy Pavilion Master Yao has reached the point of being obsessed with arrays. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come all the way from the North Island to the South Continent after seeing such a trial reward mission. The reason is obvious. It is said that it is an extremely rare array, but I don't know the specifics. Lu Bianren spread his hands helplessly. Linny nodded in agreement. Yao Luanzhen, as the Vice Pavilion Lord of Clear Cloud Pavilion, was already a big shot in his own right. His status was not to be underestimated. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't even need to participate in a trial mission. With his status, he wouldn't care about this small reward. The only thing that really attracted him was the formation itself. And then? Linny continued to ask. After many inquiries, I finally found some clues. The mysterious man who issued the task in the Cultivators Guild of the North Island once appeared in the Central Chamber of Commerce. So I inferred that this person was either an internal member of the Central Chamber of Commerce or had some kind of connection with the Central Chamber of Commerce. Lu Bianren said in full detail. It makes sense. The Central Chamber of Commerce suddenly rose overnight, giving people a feeling of mystery. It's normal that this kind of thing has something to do with them. Linny agreed. Chapter 4392. Just asking a few questions and being arrested, isn't it obvious that they have a guilty conscience? Linny suddenly frowned. Any merchant would open their doors to welcome guests from all over the world. Even if someone came to their door to make trouble, they would still have to be patient. Who would be arrested just for asking for information? It would be strange to say that there was nothing fishy about this. What's more, the Central Chamber of Commerce captured so many people just to do human experiments. No matter how you look at it, such a disregard for human life does not fit with a normal Chamber of Commerce. It's more like a cult. I think so too. The questions I asked at the time were actually very vague and I didn't mean to target them, but they still acted so sensitive. It can be seen that there must be something fishy behind it. Otherwise, why would they capture me? Lu Bianren said with certainty. Well, but in this case, this deputy pavilion leader Yao, who I have never met before, is probably dead. Maybe he has already been captured by them to do human experiments. Linny could not help but feel worried and regretful. That's not necessarily true. Lu Bianren shook his head and said, Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is a profound ascending stage master. These people in the Central Chamber of Commerce always only want gold core stage masters to do human experiments. They don't even want nascent soul stage masters, let alone profound ascending stage masters. What? Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is a profound ascending stage master? Linny was a little surprised. The first time he knew of a profound ascending stage master was when the Will of Heaven fought against Southern Aurora Polaris in Middle Island. At that time, Southern Aurora Polaris could already fight for the position of Middle Island Deputy Island Master with just the strength of the early profound ascending stage. And after that, Linny once again saw the glory of a profound ascending stage master. It was the three giants of Morning Star Academy. The Divine Nun of East Sea looked at Cheng Qitian, a gold core stage master, to death. That kind of shock was really impressive. So subconsciously, Linny always felt that the giants of the profound ascending stage were unattainable, even if he encountered more than one profound ascending stage master in the Central Chamber of Commerce. But he never changed this thought. Yao Luanjin, as the deputy pavilion leader of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island, had a high status, but compared with the deputy island master of Middle Island, he was still inferior. What's more, he had the same temperament as Lu Bianren. He was completely immersed in the study of arrays, and was not the kind of person who would desperately cultivate to improve his strength. Linny originally thought that his strength should be in the nascent soul realm, and it was very likely that he was at the peak of the nascent soul realm. This person was actually a mysterious ascended early stage expert. Lu Bianren saw through Lin Yi's doubts and explained with a smile, that's right. Although Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is obsessed with formations, he's actually very talented in cultivation. He used to be a famous super genius on the North Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to become the Deputy Pavilion Leader of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It's just that he's always kept a low profile and hasn't done anything sensational over the years, so he doesn't attract much attention. Linny nodded. After thinking about it carefully, it suddenly dawned on him. Although the Blue Cloud Pavilion was at the bottom of the three pavilions in the North Island, it was at least a giant of the same level. The Deputy Pavilion Leader of the Blue Cloud Pavilion was also a big shot standing at the top of the North Island. It was not surprising that he had the strength of the mysterious ascended early stage. Well, since Deputy Pavilion Leader Yao is a mysterious ascended early stage expert, the possibility of being caught for human experiments is indeed much lower. Maybe he's really repairing the formation somewhere. Linny pinched his chin and speculated. He had a vague feeling that the Central Chamber of Commerce suddenly looking for someone to repair the formation might not be a simple bait. It was true. People like Yao Luanzhen were not only strong enough, but also proficient in formations. For the Central Chamber of Commerce, he was a rare talent. The possibility of killing him was actually not high. According to normal logic, even if he was temporarily used up, he would not be killed. Instead, he would find an excuse to put him under house arrest to prevent any problems with the formation in the future. Linny was even speculating whether the formation that Yao Luanzhen was involved in repairing was related to the secular world. The most dazzling and special label of the Central Chamber of Commerce was that it could connect with the secular world, and the way of this connection must be some kind of extremely profound and complicated formation. Yao Luanzhen's participation in the repair may be the key to the rise of the Central Chamber of Commerce on the Heaven Stage Island. However, all this was still an unfounded speculation. Unless he really saw Yao Luanzhen and heard it from his mouth, that would be the truth. Maybe, it's just that the Central Chamber of Commerce is so nervous about this matter that they can't even casually inquire about it. There are no clues at all. If we want to find Deputy Pavilion Master Yao, the difficulty is really tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. Lu Bianren shook his head and sighed. Yao Luanzhen was not only a backer who supported him, but the two were also extremely congenial best friends. The other party had disappeared for so long and there was still no news. He was really worried that he couldn't sleep. This matter must be considered in the long run. The Central Chamber of Commerce has many masters, and they are dirty and evil. Once you are caught by them again, you won't be so lucky next time, so you must not act rashly. Lin Yi warned with a stern face. Yeah, I was too rash before, that's why I attracted their attention and fell into their hands. It's all thanks to you, Lin Yi, that I would have died this time. Lu Bianren sighed, feeling the lingering fear. If Lin Yi came a day later or even just 2 hours later, the ending may be very different. It was very likely that he would have been dragged to do the so-called human experiment by now. Maybe he would have become a corpse. This is called God's will. Senior brother Lu, you are not destined to die. If you survive a disaster, you will have good fortune later. Lin Yi comforted him with a smile and then said, but speaking of which, the Central Chamber of Commerce is indeed not easy to mess with. There's something strange about it from top to bottom. There's the secular market, human experiments, mysterious formations, and there's so many experts gathered here. There's even a profound ascending stage giant appearing out of nowhere. With our current strength, we're far from being able to fight them. Senior brother Lu, what are your plans next? This. Lu Bianren frowned and thought for a moment, then said, as you said, junior brother Lin Yi, with my strength, I can't even touch the Central Chamber of Commerce, let alone find Deputy Pavilion Master Yao. So, in order not to cause you trouble, I'd better leave immediately and go back to the North Island first. Although Lu Bianren had a mild temperament, he was never a person who was afraid of trouble, and he would never run away in the face of a battle. It was actually very difficult for him to make this decision. Chapter 4393. This was an obvious fact. If it were someone else in his position, he might not be able to see it clearly in a short time, let alone accept it calmly. But Lu Bianren was different. He was sincerely thinking for Lin Yi, and he would never stay in the South Continent to do stupid things for the sake of his ridiculous self-esteem, which would implicate Lin Yi. Senior brother Lu, I'm glad you think so. Hearing this, Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief, and at the same time he couldn't help but think more highly of Lu Bianren. He was afraid that Lu Bianren would be embarrassed, but he didn't expect Lu Bianren to be so straightforward. He nodded in agreement and said, it's beyond my power now. Just bear it and wait for a good opportunity in the future. Well, junior brother, you're right. I'll leave now and go back to the North Island. Lu Bianren made a prompt decision. He knew that every moment he stayed in Devil Lung City was a moment of risk and hidden danger. Since he had decided to leave, he shouldn't hesitate. It was better to leave before the Central Chamber of Commerce fully reacted. Senior brother Lu, wait. Lin Yi hurriedly stopped him and said, the power of the Central Chamber of Commerce is beyond our imagination. Once they react, their people will be everywhere. Senior brother Lu, if you go out like this, you'll be too obvious a target. It's very likely that you won't even be able to get out of the dock, and you'll be walking into a tiger's mouth again. Lin Yi had been wearing the Thousand Silk mask before. Now that he took it off, he was a completely different person and nothing would happen when he went out. But Lu Bianren was different. He had been locked in the dungeon for so long, and he had just escaped from it. The people of the Central Chamber of Commerce must have some impression of him. As long as the dock was blocked, if Lu Bianren went out like this, he would definitely walk into a trap. Lu Bianren also hesitated. He didn't want to involve Lin Yi, but he wasn't so fearless that he would take the initiative to die. Otherwise, why would Lin Yi spend so much effort to save him? But if he stayed here, the risk was not small. The risk was also not small. In the eyes of others, the Central Chamber of Commerce was just a newly risen large-scale chamber of commerce, but Lu Bianren and the others who had seen the dark inside stories had a much deeper understanding of the power of the Central Chamber of Commerce than others. If the people from the Central Chamber of Commerce really wanted to chase after him, once they really mobilized a large force, Lu Bianren would be discovered sooner or later if he continued to hide here. There was no room for luck at all. If he left now, there was a high chance that he would be stuck at the dock. However, it was also possible that someone would come knocking on his door. For a moment, Lu Bianren was caught in a dilemma. Just as they were in a dilemma, there was a sudden knock on the door. Lin Yi and Lu Bianren couldn't help but be startled at the same time. The first thought that popped into their minds was that the people from the Central Chamber of Commerce had caught up so quickly. Who? Lin Yi gave Lu Bianren a wink, signaling him to hide in his room, and asked in a deep voice. Brother Ling. It was me. Qi Wenhan's voice came from outside the door. Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. He went to open the door and let Qi Wenhan in. Ah. Brother Ling, I finally found you. Why did you leave by yourself first? I thought you had suddenly disappeared, making me worry for nothing. Qi Wenhan was in a hurry, both surprised and complaining. Previously, on the second floor of the Central Chamber of Commerce, he had just asked a few words with the shop assistant, and when he turned his head, Lin Yi had disappeared. At that time, his first reaction was that Lin Yi had gone up to the third floor. He wanted to chase after Lin Yi, but was stopped by the shop assistant, who said that the third floor was a private area, and was not open to people outside of the Central Chamber of Commerce. At that time, Qi Wenhan didn't think much of it. Since the third floor was not open to the public, Lin Yi must have gone back to the first floor. After all, the goods on the first floor were much more interesting, and it was more interesting just to look at them. However, when Qi Wenhan went down to the first floor and walked around, he still couldn't find Lin Yi. Even when he left the Central Chamber of Commerce and walked around the main street of Emoling City, he still couldn't find Lin Yi. Later, when he returned to the inn, there was still no trace of Lin Yi. This time, Qi Wenhan was really anxious. For the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Lin Yi was not only a great benefactor, but also an honorary escort leader. More importantly, in the upcoming South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event, they were counting on Lin Yi to help the agency fight for a good ranking. How could he suddenly disappear? If Lin Yi just went out to play, it would be fine. As long as nothing happened to him, everything would be fine. However, the problem was that although this Emoling City seemed to be much more orderly than Wayark City, it was still the South Continent Sea after all, and the nature of chaos could not be changed. If a stranger like Lin Yi appeared here, he might be targeted by some local bully. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he was only one person. Moreover, he was not at the level of a mysterious ascending stage giant who could easily suppress an area. Once he was surrounded by people, he would be at a great disadvantage. If something were to happen to Lin Yi here, then he, Qi Wenhan, wouldn't be able to absolve himself of the blame even if he died 10,000 times. He probably wouldn't even be able to keep his position as the young master anymore. After all, he was the one who first suggested going out to play. If something were to happen to Lin Yi because of this, then he would become the biggest sinner of the entire Equal Heaven Escort Agency. In just a short period of 4 to 6 hours, the news of Lin Yi's disappearance had already spread throughout the agency. Even housekeeper Song was preparing to arrange for everyone to go out and search for him. The only thing left was to call Qi Mingyuan, the head escort leader, back. As for Qi Wenhan, he was frantically searching everywhere. He had walked the road between the Central Chamber of Commerce and the inn at least 7 or 8 times. He was really anxious. If he still could not find Lin Yi, he could not wait to find Qi Mingyuan to apologize. Fortunately, he had just heard from the waiter that someone had returned from Lin Yi's room. That was why he hurried over to check on the situation. When he saw that Lin Yi was standing there safe and sound, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. His whole body felt deflated. I'm sorry to have made you worry, Brother Qi. Lin Yi saw how worried Qi Wenhan was and felt a little touched. It had happened so suddenly that he couldn't help it, but he still felt a little bad about it. I saw that you were really engrossed, so I went downstairs myself. I didn't think that I'd run into someone I knew, so I left after a few words. I'm really sorry. The reason why Lin Yi did not tell the truth was mainly because he did not want to drag the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency into this. The Central Chamber of Commerce's power was too great. A mere Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was not a match at all, and would only be caught in the crossfire. Hey, what's wrong with that? Of course, old friends should chat a little longer when they meet. Qi Wenhan waved his hand indifferently and said magnanimously, It's good that you're fine. I was just worried that Brother Ling would run into Cheng Haonan and the others from the Poison Eye mercenary band. They might come looking for trouble with you. After all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Chapter 4394. Haha, that's not true. Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. Compared to the huge threat of the Central Chamber of Commerce, the Poison Eye mercenary group was child's play. Lin Yi didn't take them seriously at all. That's good, that's good. Qi Wenhan nodded repeatedly. After being nervous for so long, he finally relaxed. "Oh right, Brother Chi, I want to trouble you to do me a favor." Lin Yi suddenly made a request with a serious expression. "Brother Ling, don't be like this. We're on the same side. Why would I trouble you? If you need anything, just tell me. I'll go through fire and water to get it done for you." Chi Wenhan patted his chest and said, "I want to use the Equal of Heaven escort agency's channels to secretly escort someone back to Weiwan City, then go back to the North Island. Is that okay?" Lin Yi asked. "Secretly escort someone?" Chi Wenhan was stunned, then nodded without hesitation and said, "Of course that's not a problem. Our Equal of Heaven escort agency does this. It's not a problem to escort someone. But Brother Ling, who is this person?" "Senior Brother Lu, come out." Lin Yi smiled and called Lu Bianren out from the inner room. He introduced the two of them and said, "This is my senior brother Lu Bianren from the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island. This is the young master of the Equal of Heaven escort agency, Chi Wenhan." "Nice to meet you." Lu Bianren and Chi Wenhan saluted each other at the same time. "Brother Ling, is this Brother Lu the acquaintance you met at the Central Chamber of Commerce? Previously, our escort agency couldn't find it no matter how hard we tried, but in the end the two of you ran into it. How can there be such a coincidence in this world?" Chi Wenhan looked Lu Bianren up and down with a look of realization. Like Wu Baoliang, Lu Bianren was the target that Lin Yi asked them to find. "Ah, it's really a coincidence." Lin Yi smiled and said, "Senior Brother Lu came to the South Island to carry out a mission a few months ago. Because of some unforeseen circumstances, he has been staying here. The brothers in the North Island are all worried about him. That's why I want to ask Brother Chi to use the security agency's channels to send Senior Brother Lu back as soon as possible." "Well said, well said. Brother Ling's business is the business of the escort agency. It's just delivering a person, there's no need to ask for anything. Brother Ling, you're treating me like an outsider." Chi Wenhan laughed heartily. In fact, with his shrewdness he could more or less guess that there must be some hidden story behind this. It was just that it was inconvenient for Lin Yi to talk about it in detail. Otherwise, there would be no need to deliberately mention a secret escort. However, he would not pursue the matter further. After all, everyone had their own things to do. If he made things difficult for Lin Yi and the others because of him asking too many questions, then he could only slap himself in the face. In the escort agency business, one should only ask questions that should be asked, and absolutely not ask questions that should not be asked. This was the most basic rule. Otherwise, not only would they offend the client, they might even invite a disaster for no reason. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal escort agency, Chi Wenhan was very clear about this point. "Then I'll leave Senior Brother Lu to Brother Chi." Lin Yi did not bother with pleasantries. He turned his head and said to Lu Bianren, "Senior Brother Lu, I still have things to do here in the South Continent. I won't go back with you for now. Tell Senior Brother Ku and the others good news for me so they don't have to worry about me." "Yes, Junior Brother, you have to be more careful. Although there's an old saying that the skilled are bold, the other party is really not to be underestimated. You must not act rashly when you're alone. It's best to go back and report this matter to the higher-ups, and then think about it at length," Lu Bianren warned with some worry. Due to Chi Wenhan's presence, he could not directly point out the Central Chamber of Commerce. However, Lin Yi naturally understood what he meant. With the terrifying strength displayed by the Central Chamber of Commerce, it was impossible to shake it with just the strength of a few people. Only by mobilizing the entire 3 pavilions of the North Island could they barely have the confidence to contend with it. "Senior Brother Lu, don't worry, I know what to do." Lin Yi nodded. Although he often fought with his life on the line, he was not a person who liked to fight. It was fine if he did not know before, but now that he knew that the Central Chamber of Commerce was full of masters, and he could easily meet a mysterious ascending stage giant, why would Lin Yi rashly provoke them again? He was not stupid. "That's good, let's meet again in the North Island." Lu Bianren cupped his hands and said goodbye to Lin Yi. "Okay, let's meet again in the North Island. There's no time to lose." "Brother Chi, arrange for Senior Brother Lu to leave now," Lin Yi said immediately. "Okay, Brother Lu, come with me." Chi Wenhan immediately brought Lu Bianren out. As one of the 5 largest escort agencies in the South Continent, the Equal of Heaven escort agency naturally had its own specialized logistics channels. Secretly escorting a person out was a simple matter, and no one from any faction would be able to detect it. After sending Lu Bianren away, Lin Yi finally had one less thing to worry about. This was the main purpose of his trip to the South Continent. As for hunting down Wu Baoliang, it was just a secondary matter. In the next few days, Lin Yi stayed in his room and did not go out. The only thing he did every day was to meditate and cultivate. This time he suddenly saw so many masters in the Central Chamber of Commerce, especially the mysterious ascending stage giants. It really stimulated Lin Yi, and the pressure was self-evident. Although he was not a person who liked to fight, he had a strong desire to win. He had always been unwilling to fall behind others, otherwise he would not have reached this level today. At present, it was obviously unrealistic for Lin Yi to reach the level of the mysterious ascending stage in a short period of time. Even if there was such a shortcut, he would not take it. Pressure was pressure, but being down to earth and well-grounded was the way to go. Therefore, the only thing that Lin Yi had to do now was to concentrate on his cultivation. The thicker his foundation, the better it was, and quietly wait for the opportunity to break through. Moreover, after the incident at the Central Chamber of Commerce, although Lin Yi had the 1,000 silk mask to deceive others, he still could not wander outside at this sensitive time, just in case. After all, he had only put on the 1,000 silk mask at the last minute when he was discovered. Previously, he had been loitering around the first and second floors with his original appearance. So many employees had seen it. With the astonishing power displayed by the Central Chamber of Commerce, who knew if they would be able to find out? Anyway, there was nothing to do outside, so Lin Yi simply did not go out. He cultivated behind closed doors while waiting for the start of the South Continent Escort Agency. In addition, Lin Yi also specifically reminded Qi Wenhan that if it was not necessary, it was best not to go out during this time. In the face of such an unfathomable Central Chamber of Commerce, no matter how careful he could not be too careful. If the Central Chamber of Commerce could really find out Lin Yi's original appearance, then they would naturally be able to find out that Lin Yi appeared with Qi Wenhan. It would not be good if Qi Wenhan was implicated because of this. Chapter 4395. One must always be on guard against others, not to mention that those people were notorious for being sinister. It was always good to be careful. It was better to avoid these kinds of things that might cause trouble. Qi Wenhan, as the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, although he had some of the habits of a young master, he was a steady person who knew the big picture. Since Lin Yi had specifically reminded him, he might as well go into seclusion and focus on studying the information of his competitors. He wanted to strive for a good position in the upcoming Southern Continent Escort Agency event. Lin Yi carefully went into seclusion. He thought that his identity was hidden enough that he should not be discovered. However, he never thought that the Central Chamber of Commerce knew him far more than he imagined. At this moment, on the third floor of the Central Chamber of Commerce, the man in black and Ma Tianlang were still there. However, both of them were not qualified to sit in the main seat. Instead, they stood aside in fear and trepidation. Their backs were drenched in cold sweat. The person sitting in the main seat was a woman, and behind her stood a mysterious man covered in a black bamboo hat. Wang Diyuan, you are the shopkeeper of the Moling branch and also the person in charge of this area. What happened this time? Explain it to me clearly. The woman's voice was very calm, as if there was no emotion, but the atmosphere in the room suddenly became stagnant. This was not a substantial suppression of momentum, but simply the aura of a superior brought about by power. Even though he was a profound ascending stage master whose strength was beyond the reach of Lin Yi, he could not help but shrink his neck. He did not even dare to breathe for fear of causing the woman's dissatisfaction. The Wang Diyuan that the woman mentioned was Ma Tianlang's boss. The man in black became more and more nervous and even began to tremble uncontrollably. This subordinate. Wang Diyuan stammered, unable to say anything for a long time. You don't know? Or you don't want to say it? The woman frowned slightly, and her eyes flashed with killing intent. It seems that you don't want to continue being the shopkeeper, right? That's fine, my lab is in need of volunteers. Although profound ascending stage masters have not been included in the research scope, it will happen sooner or later. Why don't I let you have a taste first? No, I wouldn't dare. Wang Diyuan was so frightened that he quickly knelt down. The success rate of human experimentation was extremely low. Once one was listed as a test target, 9.5 out of 10 would die. He still wanted to live a happy and carefree life. Then why don't you hurry up and say it? Could it be that you still want to shirk responsibility after such a major incident has occurred? The woman berated coldly. With her status in the organization, there was no need for her to ask about such trivial matters. Even if a branch of a Central Chamber of Commerce was destroyed, she wouldn't need to show up personally. However, this incident had caused dozens of test samples to run away all at once. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to her experiments that were at a critical stage. Even she couldn't help but feel anxious. Up until now, Wang Diyuan still hadn't fully understood the situation. However, if he couldn't come up with an explanation at this time, his fate would be bleak. He could only bite the bullet and say, "I heard that it was a martial artist that was recently captured. He seemed to have used some sort of powerful technique to blow up the dungeon." Wang Deyuan had only heard these words from others. And the words were vague and he didn't know whether it was true or not. If it was proven to be true later, then it would be fine. But if it was false, then today's matter would be huge. The other party would really take him to do human experiments in a fit of anger. What exactly is going on? Tell me clearly. The woman frowned and snorted coldly. Who the hell did you hear this from? Who is that martial artist? What is his strength? What kind of technique did he use to be powerful enough to blow up the dungeon that was reinforced by a protective formation? The protective facilities of this dungeon had already been considered at the beginning of the design. Because it was to concentrate on imprisoning Golden Core Stage Masters, the power of the protective formation was enough to resist a higher-level nascent Soul Stage Master. As long as it wasn't a profound ascending Stage Master, in theory it was foolproof. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? This is what the person we captured said. Wang Deyuan stammered, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. This incident was indeed due to his incompetence. Otherwise, if he really wanted to investigate, the truth would have come to light long ago. However, he had not been in Imolung City for the past 2 days. He was busy competing with other branches for the supply of secular goods. How could he have the time to care about his family's affairs? How could he have thought that there would suddenly be a fire in his backyard? He was the manager of the branch. If he managed the branch well, not only would it be a political achievement, but he could also take the opportunity to take advantage of the situation and make a lot of money from it. In contrast, although the dungeon that imprisoned many Golden Core Stage Masters was also within his scope of responsibility, because there was no profit to be made, he had never paid special attention to it. However, now that such a big thing had happened, Wang Deyuan regretted it. Although there was no profit to be made in the dungeon, this was a project that the whole organization attached great importance to. If there was an accident and it couldn't be remedied in time, then he would really lose his head. Just like now, he had made such a big mess, but there was no way to deal with the aftermath. His life was completely in the hands of the woman. Life or death, it was all in the hands of the woman. Where is that person? Bring him here. The woman frowned and said. She could also see that Wang Deyuan did not know the inside story. Instead of continuing to ask this muddle-headed guy, it was better to interrogate him personally. Ah. Wang Deyuan suddenly trembled, and with a bitter face he did not dare to raise his head and said, that person has been sent to do human experiments? At that time, when the dungeon was blown up, although there were masters who stayed behind to catch people from all directions, after all, there were too few people and there were too many people who escaped from the dungeon. Every one of them was a Golden Core Stage Master. When they risked their lives, their speed of escape was not small. Moreover, they fled in different directions, so the number of people who were really caught was actually very limited. And with the idea of reducing the big problem to a small one, this matter was not reported at the first time. After all, for Wang Deyuan and the others, as long as this matter was known by the higher-ups, it would be a big mistake. But if they took advantage of the fact that before the higher-ups received the news, they could quickly catch more Golden Core Stage Masters to fill in the test samples, then they could make up for their mistakes. Coincidentally, now was the critical stage of the experiment, and the requirements for the samples were especially high. Therefore, those who were caught had already been sent to do human experiments as usual. Now, they were probably already dead bodies. Chapter 4396. The key to all this was to capture a Gold Core Stage Master as soon as possible, and at the same time to avoid being discovered by the higher-ups. Unfortunately, Wang Deyuan underestimated the intelligence network of the higher-ups. How could he hide such a big movement even if he wanted to? If it was a normal time, as the person in charge of this area, he really had a chance to hide it. Unfortunately, the mysterious man standing next to the woman was the number 2 person of the organization on Heaven Stage Island, and he happened to be carrying out a mission here during this period of time. Bastard. The woman raised her leg and kicked Wang Deyuan right in the face, sending him flying. She was really angry. She wasn't afraid of a godlike opponent, but she was afraid of a pig-like subordinate. This Wang Deyuan was simply a fucking pig-like pig. Miss Luan, do you need to clean up the sect? The mysterious man said faintly, his body was full of killing intent. Fuck. Wang Deyuan, who was kicked out, was horrified. Ma Tianlang, who was still kneeling in the room, was even more frightened. Looking at the mysterious man under the black cloak and bamboo hat, his eyes were about to bleed. Is this guy serious? The woman's gaze fell on the two of them, and it seemed that she had the same intention. Losing two profound ascending stage masters was a major event for other forces, but for their organization it was far from so serious. If the woman nodded, Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang's heads would immediately fall to the ground. Although they were both profound ascending stage masters, in front of a powerful organization, under the eyes of this mysterious man, there was no chance for them to escape. Otherwise, this mysterious man would not have become the second most powerful person in the heavenly stage island. Wait, there is still one who is not dead. He was not sent to be experimented. Ma Tianlang suddenly had an idea and shouted. Really? The woman showed a little doubt. Even Wang Deyuan was panicking. While they were panicking, they were also secretly surprised. They thought that Ma Tianlang had made it up at the last minute to save his life, because he wasn't at the dark cold sea when the incident happened. The only person who was in charge of the situation at that time was his deputy, Ma Tianlang, and he was the only one who knew about the incident best. It's true, there is a nascent soul stage among the people who were captured. He is not used for human experiments. So he should still be locked up now. Ma Tianlang said quickly. Yes, there is one. That nascent soul stage cultivator has been locked up by us for a long time. Wang Deyuan finally reacted and nodded repeatedly. Then why aren't you bringing it over? Do you really want to die? Can't you see that Miss Luan is already angry? The mysterious man standing beside the woman snorted coldly. Yes. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang didn't dare to neglect it. They regarded it as the last straw to clutch at. They hurriedly rushed out to get them. After a while, the nascent soul stage expert that the two had mentioned was brought in with a face full of fear. It was Sun Hengbiao. As a nascent soul stage expert, it was actually possible for him to successfully escape. He was far stronger than the other golden core stage experts. Unfortunately, he had been beaten half to death by Linny earlier, and his strength had been greatly reduced. Thus, he was unable to escape quickly. In addition, he was a conspicuous target, so he was the first to be targeted by the expert guards who had rushed back. He was escorted by Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang. Stumbling into the room, he stole a glance at the woman and the mysterious man. Sun Hengbiao very consciously plopped down on his knees. After all, he wasn't a fool. He knew that he could be rude and unreasonable in front of others, but if he didn't cooperate in front of these people, he would definitely be seeking his own death. Tell me, how was the dungeon broken into? The woman's tone was unpredictable. Oh. Sun Hengbiao shrunk his neck and replied carefully, it was a martial artist who had just been locked up. I don't know exactly how strong he is, but he must be very strong. A middle stage nascent soul stage, was no match for him at all. We had a small scuffle at the beginning, but in the end I was beaten to the ground by him. Get to the point. The woman frowned slightly. She just wanted to know who caused her so much trouble. As for the personal grudges of a small fry like Sun Hengbiao, she couldn't be bothered to care. Yes. That person meditated quietly at the beginning, but after the two guards took one person away, he must have made sure that there was no one outside the door. He suddenly asked us to retreat behind him, and he himself activated an extremely terrifying move. I swear I've never seen such a strange martial art in my life. The destructive power was really rare. After that, there was a huge explosion in the dungeon. Then it was blown up, Sun Hengbiao said in full detail. In front of these people. He didn't dare to hide anything. You mean that person activated a very destructive move, and just by activating it with his hands, there was a huge explosion? The woman couldn't help but be slightly startled. Yes, that feeling was very strange. It was as if he had been preparing for a long time, and then suddenly exploded. I've never seen such a martial art. Sun Hengbiao himself was also confused. After all, he was a master in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. At least he could see that this was definitely a move that Linny had prepared in private, and it didn't seem like it was activated on the spur of the moment. Otherwise, if it was really that powerful, then this person would be comparable to a giant in the mysterious ascending stage. How could he have been captured in the first place? When the woman heard this, she turned her head and looked at the mysterious man. There was obviously a hint of surprise in their eyes. It was obvious that they had discovered something, and at the same time they had some suspicions. About this person, tell me everything you know, such as what characteristics this person has, or any details that left a deep impression on you. If you hide anything, you should know what the consequences will be, the woman continued to ask. Yes, I won't dare to hide anything. Sun Hengbiao hurriedly swore and then carefully thought about it and said, if you want to talk about characteristics, this person has no other characteristics besides being strong and having a rough and boorish face. However, this person's temperament and his appearance give people a strange feeling. You mean this person's temperament and appearance don't match? The woman nodded thoughtfully and said with an inscrutable expression, continue. Oh yes, there is another thing that is very strange about this person. He seems to take special care of someone. Although there is no special communication between them, in fact there is a bias, very obvious. Sun Hengbiao suddenly patted his head and said, I don't know whether it was intentional or not, that person deliberately sat next to the one surnamed Lu. Before, when the guard came in to take people away according to the rules, it should have been the surnamed Lu's turn, but that person glared at me and forced me to change it to someone else. Chapter 4397. Hearing Sun Hengbiao's words, the woman did not have any reaction, but the mysterious man's eyes suddenly narrowed for some reason. Also, if I remember correctly, after the dungeon was blown up, that person seemed to be running with that Lu guy. There must be something fishy going on between the two of them, hee. Sun Hengbiao was getting more and more excited as he spoke. Wait a minute. What's the name of the Lu you mentioned? The mysterious man suddenly asked. Oh, let me think. Sun Hengbiao frowned and thought for a long time, then finally slapped his head and said, I think he's called Lu Bianren. Lu Bianren? The mysterious man's eyes suddenly flashed, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a playful smile. Do you know this person? The woman could not help but ask. The mysterious man nodded without batting an eyelid. He glanced at Wang Deyuan and the others but did not say much. Hearing this, he had already guessed the truth, but there were too many people, so he naturally would not say it in front of these people. The few of you can leave for now. The woman understood tacitly, and immediately ordered everyone to leave. Sun Hengbiao did not say anything, but Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were both overjoyed. They thought that they had made such a big mess this time, even if they did not die they would lose a layer of skin. But looking at it, this Miss Luan did not seem to have any special intention to pursue the matter. The two of them immediately thanked her profusely, and hurriedly dragged Sun Hengbiao out. In the room, only Miss Luan and the mysterious man were left. This Lu Bianren, if I'm not mistaken, is a disciple of the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island. When he was the third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, I heard that he had a very close relationship with Lin Yi, the mysterious man said slowly. Oh? Lu Bianren and Lin Yi have a close relationship, so that means that Wu Fu is likely Lin Yi? Miss Luan nodded. In fact, before this she had already speculated in this regard. After all, she had been paying attention to Lin Yi for a long time. Yes, at least 90% likely. According to what this person said, the move that destroyed the dungeon was very similar to the alchemic firebomb. Among the people this subordinate has seen, there are only two people who are proficient in this extremely rare technique. One is Kang Ming, who is now a member of our center, and he is now in the North Island so we can rule him out. The other one is Lin Yi. The mysterious man said with certainty. He has a close relationship with Lu Bianren and also knows how to use the pill firebomb. Judging from this Wu Fu must be Lin Yi. Miss Luan concluded. There's one more thing that can be proved. Although this person looks like a martial artist, the feeling he gives off doesn't match his temperament. This means that this person is likely to be wearing a disguise, which is Lin Yi in disguise. The mysterious man nodded. Then he said, moreover, I went to the Lufeng forest to look for the infant ginseng. In fact, I had already found the traces of the infant ginseng, but it was one step ahead of me. At that time, there were traces of a pill fire bomb left at the scene. If I'm not wrong, it should be Lin Yi who did it. These things might be suspicious if they were taken apart and looked at individually, but when they were all gathered together, all the arrows pointed to the same person. Then there was no need to doubt anymore. This person must be Lin Yi. This guy is a little interesting. I really don't know whether he did it on purpose or not. He actually came to ruin our business again and again. Miss Luan couldn't help laughing. From her expression at the moment, others couldn't tell whether she was happy or angry. Miss Luan, why don't I go there myself? The mysterious man suggested. It didn't matter if it was intentional or not, letting Lin Yi do whatever he wanted wasn't a good thing for them. They didn't know what kind of trouble he'd cause in the future if they didn't do something about it. No. Lin Yi must be kept alive. He will be of great use in the future. This is something Dr. Li specifically told me. I can't violate it. Anyway, it's not a big deal. If he wants to make a mess, then so be it. Let him be. Miss Luan shook her head slightly. But Lin Yi, he has done amazing things again and again. Don't look at his current strength. I have a hunch that it won't be long before he becomes a big problem for us. At that time, it won't be so easy to deal with him. The mysterious man was a little worried. He seemed to know Lin Yi very well. With his level of strength, under normal circumstances he wouldn't pay attention to a gold core stage master like Lin Yi. He would only treat him as a lowly ant that could be crushed to death. Even if this ant made a little trouble, it would not be able to change the overall situation. However, for some reason, this mysterious man's attention to Lin Yi had far exceeded the level of treating ordinary ants. He said that it was as if he was facing a great enemy. What? With your talent and strength, why would you be afraid of such a junior? This is really strange. Miss Luan couldn't help but laugh. Now on the Heaven Stage Island, it was true that she was in charge of the overall situation, but this mysterious man was one of the chief confidants. His position in the organization was actually very high. He could reach his current level completely by relying on his super talent and strength. In the face of him, no tycoon dared to underestimate him. He was an extraordinary person. It was inevitable that the mysterious man was also a person with high standards. Not to mention ordinary people, even a profound ascending stage master would be afraid of him. However, now he only treated a gold core stage master like Lin Yi differently. He even expressed his fear in his heart. This kind of thing, even Miss Luan had heard of it. I'm not afraid. It's just that my intuition tells me that Lin Yi can't be underestimated. In order to avoid future trouble, it's best to nip the hidden danger in the bud. The mysterious man said sternly. As Miss Luan said, with his talent and strength, he never needed to be afraid of anyone. Any master, including those legendary masters, could only be surpassed by him, and no one had ever been able to surpass him. However, conceit was conceit. At the same time, the mysterious man had absolute rationality. He would never make mistakes because of conceit, and he would never underestimate the enemy because of conceit. Otherwise, if he was really the kind of person who looked down on others with a little bit of strength, it would be impossible for him to achieve his current status and level in an organization full of masters. That's right, but this Lin Yi can't die at the moment. Once he dies, it will be meaningless. This is not only an order from Dr. Li, but also a consideration of the situation. Seeing the severity of the mysterious man's words, Miss Luan explained seriously, if something happens to Lin Yi, especially if it's in our hands, it's very likely that those people will be driven to desperation and kill themselves. That'll be big trouble. Chapter 4398. Those people. The mysterious man's eyes flashed when he heard this. Of course, he knew who Miss Luan was referring to. At the same time, he also knew how terrifying those people's strength was. Yes, the situation between us and those people is still maintaining a delicate balance. We are confronting each other and don't dare to act rashly. It's not that we can't, but we don't want to. Miss Luan analyzed. Because the mysterious man had been performing tasks on Heaven Stage Island and had never left, she knew more about these things than the mysterious man. The mysterious man couldn't help but be silent. Although he was afraid of Lin Yi, who was rising rapidly, this was only a trivial matter when considered at the level of the entire organization. The situation of the confrontation between the two sides was the most important thing to consider. The current situation is that no matter which side wants to devour the other, the final result will be mutual destruction. So no matter how tense it seems, both sides have actually maintained a tacit understanding. After all, no one is stupid. If there isn't enough fuse, no one will want to inexplicably perish together with the other. Miss Luan deliberately paused and then warned sternly, however, if you make a move against Lin Yi, I am afraid that it will ignite the fuse, and then it will really lead to this unprecedented battle. So, not only can we not deal with Lin Yi now, but we also have to protect him at the critical moment? The mysterious man couldn't help but have a headache. He rubbed his temples with one hand and said, previously I was asked to protect him because of this? Yes, this matter is kept between you and me. It is a highly confidential matter. It must not be known by a third person except you and me. You know Professor Li's means. Miss Luan reminded him coldly, as for how to treat this Lin Yi in the future and what to do with him, I haven't received any news from Professor Li yet. Let's wait and see. Yes. The mysterious man still had doubts in his heart. He had a vague feeling that something would happen to this hidden danger, but since the higher-ups had already given such an order, he couldn't just defy the order because of such an uncertain doubt. Although he could summon the wind and summon the rain on Heaven Stage Island, one word from Professor Li could make him die a miserable death. He had already attached great importance to Lin Yi, but even so, he had never thought that Lin Yi's identity would be so crucial and sensitive. Pulling one hair would affect the whole body. Lin Yi was actually standing between two major forces. An important figure at the heart of the storm. In any case, with Lin Yi's current strength, he alone is far from being able to pose a threat to us. Let's not bother about him for the time being. Our top priority now is to focus on our development plan. This is the foundation that can truly influence the situation in the future. You have to be clear about your priorities. You must not be distracted by a mere Lin Yi. Miss Luan said resolutely. I understand. The mysterious man nodded. In the end, Lin Yi was just a possible hidden danger. There were many geniuses these days, and more than 90% of them were dazzling in the early stage. However, once they entered a higher level, they would lack momentum and eventually fade into the crowd. Lin Yi might not be able to escape this fate. What's more, even if Lin Yi could really grow up, the threat that he could create alone was very limited after all. On the contrary, if this extremely critical human experiment could be done successfully, the organization would be invincible from then on. They could break the balance in one fell swoop. At that time, Lin Yi would not have any time and opportunity to grow at all. The war would end early and things would be settled. Bring Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang in. Although there was a mess this time, the human experiment still has to continue. Miss Wan ordered. The mysterious man nodded and immediately called Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang, who were guarding outside in. Miss Wan. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang greeted her respectfully. The two of them were still trembling with fear as though they were walking on thin ice. Although Ma Tianlang had pulled Sun Hengbiao out in a moment of desperation, and it seemed to have dispelled the anger of this superior, being in the king's company was like being with a tiger. Who knew what Miss Wan was thinking? If she was really determined to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, the two of them would not be able to escape death. You two, I don't need to say more about how big the mess this time is, right? Miss Luan said expressionlessly, because we did not get the infant ginseng, our experiment was already very difficult. Now that we are at a critical stage, so many test samples suddenly ran away, and even the progress of the entire experiment will be greatly delayed. Miss Luan, we know our mistake. We will go and catch them now. We guarantee that the experiment will not be delayed. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang quickly knelt down, patted their chests and promised. If they did not do something quickly to atone for their mistake, if Miss Luan wanted to settle the score later, the two of them would really have a bad ending. This time they were really desperate. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang had just discussed privately outside, and they were ready to personally go outside to catch the people. With the strength of the two Shenxing stage masters, catching a few gold core stage masters was a piece of cake. As long as there was a suitable target, it was not difficult to catch dozens of them. This approach, in order to prevent suspicion, they would not do it before. Generally, they had to find a reason that was not too suspicious, like those people who were locked in the dungeon before. But now there was no other way. The human experiment was short of samples. If it was delayed for too long, it was difficult to guarantee that Miss Luan would not be angry. They had to choose the lesser of two evils, so they could only take some risks. Wait, are you two mentally retarded or retarded? Miss Luan frowned. Ah. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were suddenly stunned and looked at each other. Before this, we have already caught hundreds of gold core stage masters in the magic cold sea. Although the sea in the South Continent is notoriously chaotic, and no one will intervene even if a few of them are killed in public, but after a long time, have you not thought that it will arouse the suspicion of other big forces? Going out to catch a large number of people at this time, don't you think it is not big enough? Miss Luan looked at the two of them, completely looking at them as if they were looking at idiots. This. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang's mouth twitched. The two of them were only thinking about how to atone for their mistake. As long as they could get past Miss Luan, who the fuck cares whether those forces will be suspicious or not? In their opinion, these so-called big forces could only show off their power in the local area. In front of the experts, they were nothing. Chapter 4399. The North Island was the first to carry out human experiments. So far, it is also the place with the most missing gold core stage cultivators. Now it has attracted the attention of the top management of the three pavilions in the North Island. The incident has been secretly reported to the Law Enforcement Hall for investigation, so the North Island can only stop temporarily. I don't know how long the South Continent can last. The mysterious man stood beside Miss Luan and said lightly, "This experiment is our top priority in the Heaven Stage Island, and it is also the key trump card for us to take the initiative in the future. So it must be carried out in strict secrecy and must not be discovered by the outside world. It is not difficult to destroy those local forces on the Heaven Stage Island, but once the news is leaked, everything we have done before will be in vain." Miss Luan nodded. "We are ignorant and almost ruined the organization's plan. Please forgive us, Miss Luan." Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang quickly apologized. You are not only ignorant, you are simply stupid. You can't even watch a group of gold core stage cultivators. You are simply trash. Miss Luan said coldly, the fact that these people have run away and that the test samples are broken is secondary. What we should be worried about now is whether the news of our human experiments will spread through these people's mouths, causing panic and attention from other forces. These people who ran away are afraid that the news will leak out and they will be caught again. They should not dare to spread it around in a short time, but after a long time, it is hard to say. The mysterious man also frowned. Don't worry, Miss Luan. I will do my best to hunt them down. When these people were caught, their identities were recorded. With our organization's intelligence network and power, it should not be too difficult to hunt them down. Wang Deyuan hurriedly guaranteed. Well, I will leave this matter to you. Never let the news leak out. If you can't catch them alive, then kill these people. Remember, this is your last chance to save yourself. If you can't do it well, don't come back to see me. Miss Luan said coldly, also forget about Wu Fu and Lu Bianren. You don't need to catch them. Yes, we will definitely make up for our mistakes. Wang Deyuan and Ma Tianlang were so scared that they were drenched in cold sweat and nodded repeatedly. Although he didn't understand why Wu Fu and Lu Bianren didn't need to capture them, he didn't dare to ask. Although we can't arouse suspicion, we still have to continue the experiment. It just so happens that the dungeon has been destroyed this time. Let's move to another sea area. Anyway, we've captured a lot of people here and it's not safe to continue. Wang Deyuan, you're the person in charge of the southern continent. I'll leave this matter to you as well. If there's even the slightest mistake, I won't spare you. Young Miss Luan ordered. Yes. Wang Deyuan replied in a low voice. His life was at stake. He had already made up his mind. Even if he had to put aside the matter of the molten branch, he had to do these two things well first. Otherwise, he would not even be able to keep his head. What was the point of being greedy? Secular world, Chu family villa. Ever since He Luan Duan and the Iron Cloak sex people had come menacingly but were easily dealt with by Lin Dongfang, the villa had returned to its former tranquility. In fact, it was even more tranquil than before. This was because all kinds of rumors were spreading like wildfire. It was said that this place was treacherous, and there would be strange phenomena appearing from time to time. Many people in the surrounding area had even moved away. It was better to believe such mysterious things than not. In any case, those who could afford a villa were people who didn't lack money, who would be willing to give up a good life and stay in this place in fear. For the group of people left by Lin Yi, it wasn't a bad thing that the surrounding people had moved away. No matter what kind of temperament a cultivator originally had, they would often be more accustomed to peace and quiet. Moreover, the unconscious women were left in the villa. They needed a quieter environment. Originally, after settling the previous incident, Lin Dongfang suggested that everyone move to the West Star Mountain village. However, after discussing for a while, they finally declined. With the protection of the great Lin Dongfang, compared to the Chu family villa, moving to the West Star Mountain village was more worry-free. However, everyone had their own lives after all. They hadn't reached the point where they were completely free. It was obviously unrealistic to let them be so isolated from the world. Moreover, after experiencing this incident, even a fierce person like He Luan Duan was scared out of his wits. How could other people be afraid of him? After all, this was only the secular world. Everyone's strength was already standing at the peak of existence. Each one of them was famous. Only others were afraid of them. No one dared to take the initiative to provoke them. Even if someone could really deal with so many heaven-stage great perfection experts, if the great Lin Dongfang behind them was drawn out, who could stop him? The lackeys didn't go themselves and only sent the unconscious girls over. Letting Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing take care of so many people at once wasn't very justifiable. The old couple still wanted to have a world of their own, and so they just carried on as usual. The girls were still settled in the villa, and the lackeys were still in groups of two, taking turns to guard the place. Today it was Qin Tian and Ling Shan's turn to guard the place. Ling Shan was in the room taking care of the girls, while Qin Tian, General Wei Wu, and the purple lightning beast were working downstairs. The man and the two beasts were extremely nervous, as if they were facing a great enemy. They were playing landlord. When people were bored, they would always do something stupid. Even practitioners were no exception. Fighting the landlord with two spiritual beasts was something that Qin Tian had never done before, and it wouldn't be repeated in the future. What was even rarer was that his face was plastered with white paper. Playing landlord with two spiritual beasts. He was a human, and he was the one who lost the most. Qin Tian's eyebrows furrowed. He was about to lose again. Just as the atmosphere was getting tense, the doorbell rang. Who is it? Qin Tian paused. The two beasts didn't seem to be alerted at all, and he knew that it was just a normal person, no threat. Express delivery. It was the voice of a guy outside. Express delivery? Chintian was even more surprised. He never bought anything online, and even if someone did, they wouldn't send it here. What express delivery? Plus, the things needed in the villa were all bought by them in shifts from the nearby supermarket. Faubert would often send all sorts of things over, so no one would buy express delivery here. At that thought, Chintian felt that something was wrong. He gave the two beasts a look and got up to open the door. The two beasts, on the other hand, silently went out from the back door, flanking from both sides. If anything went wrong, one man and two beasts would attack at the same time. Chapter 4400. Carefully opening the door, Chintian looked at the person. He really did look like a normal person dressed like a delivery boy. If he had to point out a difference, it would be that he was more experienced. Where's the delivery? Chintian frowned. This is the address, Ocean View Bay Villa Area 8th Villa, Lingshan or Wu Chintian. May I ask which one are you? The delivery boy replied faintly. Oh? Chintian was even more suspicious now. Who the hell are you? If it was someone else's name written on it, it might really be possible that they bought something and filled in the address to save trouble. But since it was written with his own name, it didn't make sense at all. He didn't buy anything. After last time's experience, Chintian didn't think that anyone would be so incorrigible as to come looking for trouble, but his first reaction was still to be cautious. This guy was a spy sent by some small fry to spy on him. Ah. The deliverman was startled and looked at him as if he was a lunatic. He muttered, I'm just a deliverman. Who else could I be? Let me see the package. Chintian observed the man's expression carefully. After making sure that there was nothing wrong, he took the package. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the heaven realm. In the secular world, he was an existence akin to an atomic bomb. Even if the other side had bad intentions, he didn't need to worry, he just needed to instinctively be vigilant. Chintian looked down at the package and froze. The handwriting on the package looked familiar, but he thought about it. Wasn't this Boss Lin Yi's handwriting? That wasn't all, but the big stamp on the package made Chintian's jaw drop. He almost fainted. What was written on it was Heaven Island Central Express Service Company. What the fuck? This was the first time Chintian felt like he was suffocating ever since he became strong. His mind went blank. What kind of delivery company was this? Even the Heavenly Island had appeared. Could it be that Boss Lin Yi had sent the mail from the Heavenly Island? Isn't this a little too mystical? Such an exaggerated thing, the first reaction of a normal person's brain would be. Something wasn't right, and Chintian was no exception. He looked at this man suspiciously. Who sent this guy here? This whole setup was pretty good, wasn't it? Are you the recipient or not? Do you want to sign here? If not, I'll return it. The courier man felt goosebumps rising from the bottom of his heart. If it had been someone with a weaker mental fortitude, he would probably have turned around and run away. There was no other way. Nowadays, everyone was afraid of encountering a lunatic. Now that things had come to this, Chintian didn't continue thinking about it. After all, everything else could be a lie, but this was Lin Yi Boss handwriting. It couldn't be fake, and no matter how he looked at it, this delivery man was indeed just an ordinary person. He didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Sign here. Of course I have to sign for it. Chintian quickly said. It didn't matter if this was a trap or not, he had to take a good look at it. In the common world, a near-invincible heavenly grandmaster could ignore a trap or a trap. He didn't really believe it, but what if this really was from Boss Lin Yi? Here, sign here. You can send a reply within 30 days. This is my name card. Call me when you're done and I'll come to pick it up. The courier man said as he handed the card to Chintian. Chintian's mouth twitched. What kind of world was this? Even delivery men were giving out name cards. Please call me when you're done. I'm leaving. The courier man nodded to Chintian and turned to leave. Wait. Chintian was startled and quickly pulled him back. Is there anything else? The deliverman's face was obviously guarded, and he even subconsciously got into a defensive posture. It was obvious that he was treating Chintian as a psychopath who might bite at any moment. Look. Chintian scratched his head awkwardly. What company is this? How can you deliver from Sky Class Island all the way here? We're Central Express, haven't you heard of it? The courier man looked at him curiously. Nope, never heard of it. Chintian shook his head. He never bought anything online and no one would send him stuff for no reason. Naturally, he hadn't heard of it. But just because he hadn't heard of it didn't mean that other people hadn't heard of it. In fact, Central Express was a company that had risen recently. Not only were their distribution channels fast and smooth, but their delivery speed was also much faster than other delivery companies. Their prices were also very low, and so in just a few months, Central Express had quickly taken over the market. There was basically no one who didn't know about Central Express. Alright, although our Central Express has only been established for a short period of time, the current market scale is not below any of the top express delivery companies. Our logistics channels are spread all over the world, and there are many express deliveries from overseas, including many small islands such as Hawaii. Although I have never heard of your heavenly island, I guess it should be a small island, the courier explained. Hawaii. What does that have to do with Sky-class island? Chintian froze, thinking about it for a while before reacting. This guy didn't even know what Sky-class island represented. He thought it was some small island in the ocean. I'm sorry, I've never been to Sky-class island, but I guess it's something like that, the courier man said awkwardly. Does your company have a lot of these? Does it have anything to do with Sky-class island? Chintian didn't want to give up. I'm not too sure about that. I'm just a high-level courier here. I'm usually in charge of international mail and some return receipts. Yours is a return receipt, the courier man said. Return receipt? Chintian paused. According to what the courier man said, he could get a reply within a month. He couldn't help but ask, then what kind of return receipt are you talking about? Where do you send it? Is it to the sender's place? Chapter 4401. Since it's sent from Sky-class island, naturally it's sent back to Sky-class island. Why else would it be called a receipt? The courier looked at Chintian weirdly. He felt that this person was not only crazy but retarded as well. No, I mean, how did you send the letter to Sky-class island? Chintian quickly asked. In fact, he was still wondering if he was dreaming. Sky-class island had always been a place of legends, and if it wasn't for Lin Yi's boss passing through the portal, he wouldn't have believed that there was such a mysterious place in the world. But now, something even more unbelievable had happened. This so-called central delivery company was actually able to send letters back and forth between Sky-class island and the common world. Even someone as knowledgeable as Chintian had to slap himself in the face to see if he was really still dreaming. But the handwriting was indeed Lin Yi boss handwriting. There was no doubt about that. If this was some kind of elaborate scam, then even Lin Yi boss handwriting could be imitated so flawlessly. And so, Chintian's current state of mind could only be described as half believing and half doubting. More accurately, 40% believing and 60% doubting. I'm sorry, I'm not too sure myself. I'm just a high-level courier and I'm only in charge of the delivery. I don't ask about anything else. Plus, the logistics channel is a company secret and normal people wouldn't know about it. I can only tell you that the letters are sent back to the headquarters first, and then transferred. The courier shrugged. Is that so? Thank you then. Seeing that he couldn't get any more information out of the courier, Chintian could only give up and let him go after signing the receipt. But although he said that, he didn't plan on letting it go just like that. No matter how he thought about it, this central courier was too suspicious. Sending letters back and forth between Sky-class island and the common world, this was something that would topple anyone's worldview. If traveling back and forth between Sky-class island and the common world was really that easy, then Lin Yi boss wouldn't have had to go through all this trouble with so many top masters. Plus, now that more than a year had passed, if he could really go back and forth freely. Even if boss Lin Yi wasn't done with his business, he would still come back to see everyone, right? Chintian's only thought now was to investigate this express delivery company that popped out of nowhere. But while he was a Sky-class perfected, he wasn't a professional, and if he had to do it himself, he'd have to fight his way up to their doorstep. Trying to investigate without leaving any traces would be a fool's errand. However, just because Chintian couldn't investigate this express delivery center didn't mean that other people couldn't do it. What happened? Speak of the devil. Lingshan came down from the second floor with a glass of water in her hand. She couldn't help but ask when she saw Chintian staring blankly at a package. Sister-in-law Lingshan, you came at the right time. I just received an express delivery. Can you see if you can investigate this express delivery company? Chintian said quickly. Lingshan was from the Supernatural Investigation Department, and investigating a delivery company was a piece of cake. Why do you need to investigate the express delivery company? Lingshan asked, confused. She looked at Chintian with a weird expression, almost as weird as the guy from before. What kind of logic was this? Investigating the express delivery company? She drank some water right now. Didn't that mean she had to investigate the water factory? No, this express delivery company is weird, very weird. Chintian explained. Weird how? Did they scam you out of money? Lingshan was getting more and more confused. Not really. Chintian was a Sky-class perfected, and no one in the common world would dare scam him out of money. He didn't lack it either, so he waved the package in his hand and smiled bitterly. It's a package that just came. It's from Boss Linny. Ling Shan spat out the tea in her mouth, almost falling down the stairs. She didn't even have time to care about the splashing tea, she didn't even know how she got there. Chen Tian didn't even finish his sentence before the package was snatched away by Ling Shan, and he was splashed with tea at the same time. It really is Lin Yi's handwriting? Ling Shan looked at the package, too shocked to say anything. Her eyes started to redden. Tears were welling up in her eyes, but they didn't come out. A whole year had passed. It had been a long time and there was still no news from Lin Yi. She was worried about Lin Yi's safety every single day, and every single day felt like a year. Admittedly, Lin Yi was already very strong before he left, enough to crush all the top-class practitioners in the common world. But Sky Class Island was different after all. It was a place of legends. How dangerous would it be? Would they be bullied and besieged because they were unfamiliar with the place? Even if the Heavenly Island really existed, it was still a mystery. Sometimes, Ling Shan would even wake up in the middle of the night because she couldn't help but worry. It had been so long and he still hadn't come back. Did something happen to Lin Yi? She didn't think that she would receive a package from Lin Yi today, and from Sky Class Island at that. Ling Shan's reaction was the same as Chen Tian's, blanking out and feeling like her brain was lacking oxygen. Ling Shan's sis-in-law, do you think we should investigate this central delivery? Chen Tian said urgently. As far as he was concerned, there were only two possible outcomes if he could investigate the identity of this express delivery company. One was that the package was fake, and someone had forged Boss Lin's handwriting. That way they'd be able to follow the clues and see through the scam. The other possibility was that the package was real, and that Lin Yi's boss had sent it personally from Sky Class Island. The meaning behind this was very tempting. If this central delivery really could travel freely between Sky Class Island and the common world, then wouldn't they be able to go to Sky Class Island and find Boss Lin Yi if they could see through their methods? Chen Tian's thought was logical, and Ling Shan naturally thought of it as well. She didn't act impulsively. No matter what, let's gather everyone first. Alright. Chen Tian couldn't wait to call everyone, leaving Ling Shan staring at Lin Yi's handwriting alone. Chapter 4402. She, of course, wanted to read the letter as soon as possible, but it wasn't appropriate to do so before everyone was gathered. She was Lin Yi's girlfriend, but if this letter was really written by Lin Yi, then it would be for everyone, not just her. As a result, the letter had to be opened in front of everyone. Ling Shan was feeling 100 claws scratching at her heart, but she could still hold it in for a little while. After receiving Chen Tian's call and knowing that Lin Yi had sent a package from Sky Class Island, everyone's first reaction was that this guy was either messing with them or had gone crazy. No one believed him. However, even if he didn't believe it, in less than 2 hours, everyone had already gathered at the Chu clan's villa. Han Xiaopa, Fatty Lai, Kang Xiaobo, Chen Yutian, Cheng Yi, Su Shirhan, Zhao Qikuan, Zhao Qijiu, Pai Jishan, Pai Jihai, Yu Bing, Ing Ziyu, and the others. Other than Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing, who stayed at West Star Village, everyone from Lin Yi's group was present. The reason why they were able to arrive so quickly was not only because of their strong teamwork, but also because of the aftereffects from last time. Everyone was scared by the sudden attack from He Luo Dan and the others, and it was fortunate that Lin Dongfang came out to save them. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Lin Yi's boss went to Sky Class Island and entrusted these ladies to them. If anything were to happen to them, how would they be able to face Lin Yi? After the previous incident, everyone had learned their lesson. Although they still took turns to guard in pairs, they would not go too far if there was no special need. Once something happened, they would be able to rush to the villa within 2 hours, just like what was happening now. The first thing they did when they arrived at the villa was to drag Wu Chintian out. First, they beat the crap out of this guy. But when they saw the package in Ling Shan's hands, especially when they saw Lin Yi's signature on it, they couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Is this real? Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in disbelief, and they had a horrified expression as if they had seen a ghost. It could be real, it could also be fake. No matter what, this delivery center is definitely suspicious. We need to investigate this thoroughly, Chen Tian said confidently. Everyone frowned and thought about it. All of them nodded in agreement. That was indeed the case. Regardless of whether it was true or not, there was a need to investigate this express delivery company that had suddenly appeared. If the express delivery was fake, then it meant that there was definitely someone with ulterior motives behind it. They were using this express delivery in Boss Lin Yi's handwriting to make a fuss. If the express delivery was real, then it was even more necessary to investigate the identity of the Central Express Delivery Company. It was actually able to freely travel between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble sister-in-law Lingshan to step in. Everyone turned to Lingshan. The package from Sky Class Island was evidently a supernatural incident, and the Occult Investigation Department had the authority to investigate paranormal happenings. She was the most suitable person to handle this. I'll contact the Supernatural Investigation Bureau right away and let them investigate. Lingshan nodded. She cared about Lin Yi's safety more than anyone else, and this was something she couldn't pass on to anyone else. Then what about this express delivery? Should we open it? The group looked at each other. Almost all of them were Sky Class Full Mastery, and in the secular world, they shouldn't be afraid of anything. However, the arrival of this express delivery was really unimaginable. If it was anyone else, no matter how dense their nerves were, they would still have some doubts in their heart. Of course we have to open it. Lingshan, Qingyi, Shirhan, and Ziyu said together. They were the bolder ones on this matter, and the reason was simple. They cared about Lin Yi the most. This express delivery might very well be a trap, but what if it wasn't? Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance, they wouldn't just leave it like this. After all, Lin Yi sending a letter back wasn't something that would happen in real life, but it was something they would fantasize about in their dreams. Plus, their dreams had turned into reality. They couldn't just leave the door open because of a little bit of worry. Alright, but before we open it, we need to take precautions first. Yu Qian and the others looked at each other. As men, they couldn't be more cowardly than these girls. Plus, they really wanted to know what was in this express delivery. With their Sky Class Full Mastery bombs and the like posed no threat to them. Plus, this express delivery was flat, and it didn't look like it could contain a bomb. If there were no surprises, there should be a letter inside. But that didn't mean there was no danger. If this was a trap, then the letter might have some sort of colorless and odorless poison on it. They might be Sky Class Full Mastery, but if it really was some sort of poison, they might not be able to survive it. Just to be safe, Lingshan put on a pair of gloves with excellent insulation, the uniform of the Supernatural Investigation Department. Only then did she slowly open the express delivery under everyone's gaze. The group held their breaths as expected. What they saw wasn't something dangerous, but a piece of station, a normal piece of stationery. If they had to point out the difference between it and other stationery, it would be that it was more refined and elegant. This is Lin Yi's handwriting, and the way he speaks is his usual style. There's no mistaking it, it's Lin Yi's handwriting. Lingshan took a quick look and was overjoyed. If this was a trap, imitating Lin Yi's handwriting, that was possible, but even the way he spoke wasn't realistic. This meant that Lin Yi had definitely written this letter. This meant that this express delivery company that popped out of nowhere could really travel between Sky Class Island and the common world. This was unbelievable. Really? Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that, their faces filled with joy. They hurriedly urged Lin Yi, "What did Boss Lin say up there? How's he doing?" "Don't rush, I'm not done reading it yet. I'll give it to you guys right away." Lingshan was afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold themselves back and would snatch it from them. She didn't have time to read it, so she quickly scanned through the letter and passed it to the group, passing it around. The group read it one by one, and those who couldn't wait came over to read it together or pestered Lingshan to tell them the contents. They couldn't help but sigh as they listened. Chapter 4403. Without a doubt, the letter that everyone was reading was the one that Lin Yi wrote at the Middle Island auction. He didn't lack spirit jade anyway, and he just wanted to give it a try. Even if it didn't reach them, Lin Yi wouldn't feel that it was too much of a pity. However, even he himself wouldn't have thought that this letter would actually reach them. For safety reasons, the contents of the letter didn't touch on any confidential information. Basically, Lin Yi told her everything that had happened since he came to Sky Class Island, from when he first entered the welcoming pavilion to when he went to Central Island, including meeting Tian Chan and Shueli from the beginning to the end. The reason why Lin Yi didn't mind the details was because he wanted to let everyone know that he was safe and sound on Sky Island. On the other hand, he wanted everyone to have a general impression of Sky Island. After all, one's vision determined one's height. As practitioners, with Lin Yi's help, they would reach the same heights one day. Perhaps in order to increase their strength, they would have to go to Sky Island to train. It wasn't a bad thing to let them be mentally prepared now. Other than that, Lin Yi also mentioned in the letter that he already knew where Zhang Liju was, and he was trying his best to find him. One day he would be able to go back and save the girls. He told everyone not to worry too much and not to worry too much. At the end of the letter, Lin Yi naturally asked about everyone's situation. After all, he already knew that this was a letter from the Middle Island auction. In theory, he should be able to receive a reply from everyone. Just like how everyone was worried about him, Lin Yi, who was on Sky Island, was also worried about his women and followers in the common world. The Chu Villa, which was usually peaceful, was bustling for an entire afternoon. Everyone read Lin Yi's letter once and it wasn't enough. Ling Shan and the others even fought to read it a second time. Because it was his first time reading, it was very rough, and it was so rare to receive a letter from Lin Yi, so he had to read every word and sentence carefully. At the same time, those who couldn't get the chance to read it a second time were all excited, and they discussed the situation that Lin Yi mentioned in the letter. When it came to the exciting part, everyone was so excited that they couldn't wait to recreate the scene. Only then would they be able to enjoy themselves. After reading the letter, everyone's yearning for the Heaven Step Island had become even more intense. They were all looking forward to when Boss Lin Yi would return and bring them to the legendary Heaven Step Island. Everyone stayed together until night time and did not disperse. They were still enthusiastically discussing what they had seen and heard in Lin Yi's letter. Since they knew that Boss Lin Yi was fine, they didn't have to worry about him. Their original worries could now be completely put down. They also became more motivated and looked forward to the future. And in this process, Ling Shan's phone rang all of a sudden, and everyone shut their mouths as they stared at Ling Shan, waiting for her to finish the call. Everyone. The Occult Investigation Bureau's investigation on the delivery center is out. Ling Shan said to the group. How is it? How is it? Chen Tian and the others asked impatiently. Since Boss Lin Yi's letter was real, it meant that the courier center really had eyes and ears everywhere. This meant that the Central Express Delivery Center was really omnipotent and could freely travel between the Heavenly Island and the secular world. Of course, everyone wanted to know the details of such a magical express delivery company. I've already told them to send the information to my phone. Let's take a look. Ling Shan took out a projector and projected the information on the wall, making everyone gather in a circle to study it. After all, the Supernatural Investigation Bureau had an official background, and it was not an ordinary department. It had a lot of authority. The information that everyone saw was the result of collecting all kinds of information through many channels, including all kinds of public and private, and even some that could not be seen in the light. They didn't find anything suspicious after reading through the information. This was completely different from what they had expected. As a mysterious courier company that could connect to Heaven Step Island, there was no doubt that the courier center was carrying secrets that couldn't be told to anyone. However, after reading so much detailed information, everyone realized that although the logistics network of this express delivery company was indeed accessible and much more powerful than ordinary express delivery companies, other than that, there didn't seem to be anything magical about it. This courier center that popped out of nowhere really has a lot of secrets. The group looked at each other. Even the investigation department couldn't find out anything about it. This was no small matter. But the more it was like this, the more it proved that it wasn't normal. Think about it, if it was just a normal courier company, how could they escape the eyes and ears of the investigation department? How could they send a courier from Heaven Step Island? Wait a minute, this courier center is a foreign company, and its headquarters is in Europe? Chen Tian pointed at one of the documents, surprised. Express delivery companies were different from other industries. Only after they had taken root in the local area could they expand into the market and gain recognition. Therefore, many of them were local logistics companies. Everyone thought that the sudden rise of the Central Express Delivery Company should be no exception, but they did not expect it to be a completely foreign company, and its headquarters was in Europe. Oh right. The group reacted and raised a new question. Who's the founder and boss? The information doesn't say. I'll get someone to look into it right now. Ling Shan realized this as well, and called the investigation department. The group had a feeling that if they could find out who this courier center's boss was, they might be able to find out who it was. After a while, the results came out. Firewolf Group. The 4 simple words made everyone look at each other, and it took a while for them to speak. There's something fishy about this. Looks like we'll have to contact Dafeng Bro about this. Ling Shan said, rubbing her chin. The group nodded as well. Red Conches and Firewolves were one, so Dafeng Bro could be considered as someone who had infiltrated Firewolf Group. Only he would be able to get to the bottom of this. Chapter 4404. None of the people present could hold themselves back after seeing Dafeng Bro's unexpected appearance. They were all laughing so hard they couldn't stand up straight. In the end, it was Ling Shan who came out and explained everything to Dafeng Bro, passing around Lin Yi's handwritten letter. Dafeng Bro was no less shocked than the others when he read the contents of Lin Yi's letter. He was alone in the Red Conch, and it had been a long time since he received any news from Lin Yi. This feeling of not knowing when the end would come was much more difficult to bear than the others. Fortunately, Lin Yi had left him the antidote before he left, so he didn't have to worry about his life. He was grateful to Lin Yi even now. "How is it? Do you know anything about this central delivery?" Ling Shan and the others asked impatiently. "I'm not sure. I'm only in charge of a part of Red Conch's business, and it's hard for me to get involved in other matters. This central delivery seems to have been established not too long ago, and I don't have much to do with it. But I can go back and try to investigate," Dafeng Bro said. "Is that so?" Everyone couldn't help feeling disappointed. If they could figure out the ins and outs of the Central Express Delivery Company, they might be able to figure out how to freely travel between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. This matter was extremely important, but it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy to figure it out. "Don't be too dejected. I have some power there and I can't guarantee that I'll be able to get the core information, but we can at least try. No matter what, we'll be able to get some inside information," Dafeng Bro said to the others. "Okay, we'll leave it to you then." The others nodded. In order to avoid suspicion, Dafeng Bro didn't stay in the villa for too long. He left under the cover of the night. Dafeng Bro was very efficient, and the others didn't have to wait long. Before they could leave the villa, Dafeng Bro sent a message the next morning. The express from Heaven Island is said to come from a small island in the sea near Las Vegas. That sea is the base of the Fire Wolf Group, and the core island is called Fire Wolf New Island. The express was sent from there, but it was sent from there before. I don't know. Looking at the message sent by Big Brother Feng, everyone could not help but fall silent. In fact, according to this inference, it was easy to infer that the express delivery should have arrived at Heaven Island before arriving at the new Fire Wolf Island. Although this speculation was shocking, it seemed to be the most reasonable one. In other words, in this new Fire Wolf Island, there was a large number of people. There was a high possibility that there was a special passage connected to Heavenly Island. However, even if they were quite confident in this conjecture, there was nothing they could do to determine whether it was true or not. Only by seeing it with their own eyes would they know. However, the new Fire Wolf Island was the base of the Fire Wolf Gang. They couldn't just barge in with force, right? The strength of Heaven Realm Great Circle was enough to move unhindered in the secular world. However, they were not arrogant and conceited people. They had never felt that they were invincible in the world. Moreover, the previous incident had already given them a wake-up call. If Lin Dongfang had not appeared at the last moment to save the day, it would be hard to say how many people would have survived. Plus, Sky Class Full Mastery was only a threat in the common world. It was just like what Lin Yi said in the letter. Sky Class Full Mastery was only a threat in the common world. On the mysterious Sky Class Island, it was just like what Lin Yi said. Since the new Fire Wolf Island could be connected to Heaven Island, who knew what kind of masters were hiding there? If there was a master from Heaven Island, even if there was only one, it was not something the people here could handle. Qintian and the others may be hot-blooded people, but they weren't brainless. They wouldn't do something as stupid as charging in without knowing the enemy's background. Lingshan, sister-in-law, since we have a clear target, it seems that we can only trouble the secret investigation department again. If we don't know the truth, we can't act rashly. The others looked at each other and said cautiously. Before Lin Yi left, he gave them the most important task, which was to protect the girls who were unconscious. Other than that, everything else was secondary. If they acted rashly to investigate the new island or even cause trouble because of it, it would be putting the cart before the horse, and the loss would not be worth it. Yeah, that's the only thing we can do for now, but don't get your hopes up. If it were within Wuxia, the occult investigation department would be able to investigate a little, but this island is a small island outside of Wuxia, and it's very secretive. Even the occult investigation department wouldn't be able to extend their reach that far. We'd be thankful if we could get some outside information, Lingshan said. Right now it's better to know as much as we can. Knowing some clues is better than not knowing anything. Although it's not the time for us to go against them completely, it's best to plan ahead. Only then can we be prepared. Be careful, don't let them find out. Yu Bing said in a low voice. Yes, Boss Lin Yi didn't tell us to deal with this courier or the new island behind it. Even if we want to investigate them, we need to be careful and not force our way in. We don't want unnecessary trouble. The others nodded in agreement. In any case, protecting the unconscious women was the most important thing. Otherwise, if they were not careful and provoked a strong enemy that they couldn't deal with, then it would be really difficult. They couldn't really hide in the West Star Mountain village and let Lin Dongfang, the great god, come out again, right? They were Boss Lin Yi's people, but they were still masters in their own right. They didn't have that thick of a skin to ask the old man for help whenever they needed it. Don't worry everyone. I'll personally go back to the secret investigation department to keep an eye on the island. Safety first, I promise we won't alert them. Lingshan nodded. Oh right, I almost forgot something important. The courier guy said that the letter Lin Yi boss sent us was a receipt. This means that we can reply to Lin Yi boss and have this courier deliver it to boss Lin Yi. Qintian slapped his forehead. We can reply? Why didn't you say so earlier? The group was surprised and happy, but their faces turned unfriendly. They grabbed Qintian and started beating him up. Luckily they hadn't left yet. Otherwise they'd missed this important chance to send a message to boss Lin Yi. Chapter 4405. This time even Lingshan, Qingyi, Su Shihan, and Ziyu didn't let him go. They didn't care about their image as girls at all, rushing up and punching Qintian. It was a scene that made people's hair stand on end. If Lin Yi was here, he'd have to think twice about messing with these girls in the future. In less than 3 minutes, Qintian was beaten beyond recognition. In the chaos, his clothes were torn to shreds and his hair was a mess. He looked pitiful as if he'd just been abused. The crowd was laughing so hard that they almost collapsed on their stomachs. Brothers and sisters, please go easy on me or I'll call the police. Qintian said with a wronged face. Fortunately, he was a physical practitioner so he couldn't be beaten to death. Of course, the crowd wouldn't really kill him, but this image was too embarrassing. If someone took a picture of him and posted it, how would he face people in the future? You deserve it. It's your fault for delaying the military, delaying such an important message until now. You're not reliable at all. Everyone cursed, not a single one of them sympathizing with him. It had been almost an entire day since they'd received the package. A normal person would have said it right away, but Qintian waited until now. Who else would they beat up if not him? It's just a bit late, it's not like I really forgot about it. What are you guys so nervous about? Qintian scratched his head, speechless. He'd been focused on this package ever since he'd received it, thinking about what was going on behind the scenes. In fact, if it weren't for that flash of inspiration, he might have forgotten about it just like that. A whole 20 hours and you call that a bit late? Everyone scoffed and ignored him. They gathered in a circle, unable to conceal their excitement as they discussed. Come. Let's talk about it. What should we write back to Boss Lin? It's simple, everyone write one and send it out together? Fatty Lai suggested. Yes, everyone write one, write as many as you want. I've decided I'll write 50,000 words first. Ziyu said with pride. 50,000? Sister Ziyu, do you think you're writing a novel? That's right. 50,000 words is too much. 50,000 words written on paper is too thick. They might not even be willing to deliver it. I think 30,000 words should be enough. Shihan said seriously. Everyone fainted. His 30,000 words were a thick stack. How much better was it compared to Ziyu's 50,000? Moreover, there were so many people present. If each of them wrote 30,000 words, it would add up to hundreds of thousands of words. How thick would the paper be? The courier service would probably go crazy, right? 30,000 words is too much. Everyone should be more realistic. Otherwise, even if Lin Yi received it, he'd have to go into isolation for a couple of days just to read it. Lingshan couldn't help but laugh. That's a lot of words. Lingshan couldn't help but laugh. Exactly. Sister-in-law Lingshan is right. Everyone nodded in agreement and asked, what do you think the upper limit should be? About that. Lingshan thought about it seriously for a long time before saying slowly, how about 20,000? Holy shit. Everyone collapsed, not sure if they should be laughing or crying. At the end of the day, it turns out that even you have 10,000 characters at the beginning? I can't help it, it's been a year. There's too many things I want to say. Lingshan stuck her tongue out, embarrassed. It had been a whole year, and the things that had happened during that time were too many to talk about. Plus, women were emotional creatures and no matter what happened, they'd always want to share it with the man they loved. Lingshan was no exception. Because of the length of the letter, everyone gathered together and discussed enthusiastically for an entire hour. Finally, they reluctantly reached a consensus. One by one they got a pen and paper, found a place to sit and began to write. The atmosphere was very tense, as if a big exam was approaching. As for what they were going to write, they'd have to wait for Lin Yi to receive it on Sky-class Island. Of course, there was also the possibility that he wouldn't receive it. For example, the letter they were going to write might be too heavy and thick, and the courier service wouldn't send it. Sky-class Island, Nanzhou Lenghai. Devil Lung City, which was already bustling with noise, was especially crowded today. The highly anticipated escort agency event of the South Continent had officially begun today. It was a festival in name, and it didn't sound like it had anything to do with most people. However, the truth was that in the chaotic Nanzhou seas, the escort agencies were far more than just a normal logistics organization. Due to the lack of a unified and powerful official force, many escort agencies played the role of maintaining order in the many seas of Antarctica to a large extent in addition to escorting escorts. Their existence was an indispensable deterrent to all sorts of small fries, including pirates. This was the truth. Although the South Continent seas were all chaotic places, there was still a huge difference in the degree of chaos between them. Usually, the sea regions with powerful escort agencies were relatively stable, while the sea regions with weak escort agencies, or even no escort agencies, were extremely chaotic. For example, the Lunghai Seas had the Four Seas Escort Agency, and so the order there had always been the best out of all the seas in Nanzhou. Another example was the Weyark Sea. Although the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, which was ranked 5th, was not as orderly as the Lunghai Seas, at least it wasn't out of control. However, there weren't any decent and powerful escort agencies in the Jinduan Sea. Hence, its degree of chaos was far beyond that of the Dark Magic Sea region and the Verdant Arc Sea region. It had always been a gathering place for many pirates. Even if pirates brazenly discussed robberies, no one dared to be a busybody. This was because 7 out of 10 people in the vicinity were pirates, while the remaining 3 were brokers who specialized in selling stolen goods to pirates. Hence, without the existence of these escort agencies, the situation in the many seas would be far more chaotic and cruel than it was now. It was very likely that it would be in a mess, and even a slightly more prosperous city like the Lunghai Sea would be nowhere to be seen. Hence, the Nanzhou Escort Agency Festival, which was held once every 5 years, gathered all the most powerful escort agencies in the Nanzhou Seas. It wasn't a simple gathering of the industry, but a core festival that everyone in the Nanzhou Seas paid close attention to. Chapter 4406. Not only would its outcome determine the ranking of the major escort agencies, but it would also affect the future power structure of the Southern Continent Sea region. In the coming year, which sea region was safer and which sea region was more dangerous would depend on the direction of this grand event. At this moment, people from all walks of life had already gathered in the vast Magic Cold Plaza. At a glance, it looked majestic and there were all kinds of factions present. Many of them were invited to attend the ceremony, and many of them had come to watch the excitement. However, the most conspicuous group of people present were the escorts from the escort agencies. As Lin Yi looked at the dazzling array of escort agency flags and listened to Qi Wenhan's explanation, he couldn't help but be secretly surprised. Although the Southern Continent's escort agency grand event was hosted by the 5 major escort agencies, there were actually 32 agencies participating. In other words, almost all the escort agencies in the Southern Continent Sea region were present. The Southern Continent's escort agency grand event truly lived up to its name. There was only one final objective of this grand meeting, and that was to decide on the 5 strongest escort agencies. There were 32 escort agencies present here, yet they had to compete for a mere 5 spots. The difficulty of this was obvious. Previously, Lin Yi had only been thinking about Wu Bao Liang and hadn't paid much attention to the Southern Continent's escort agency grand event. However, it seemed that it wouldn't be easy for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to maintain its position in the top 5. In the middle of the plaza, a temporary stage had been set up. It wasn't big and there were only 5 seats on it. However, the people in each seat sat upright. Although they didn't make a sound, the aura of these 5 people was enough to suppress the entire crowd. The demeanor of experts was unmistakable. Among them, Qi Wenhan's father, Qi Mingyuan, was impressively present. Needless to say, this was the judging panel formed by the 5 major escort agencies. Thank you, everyone, for your support. I am the 4 Seas Escort Agency's head escort, Boundless Sea, representing the 5 major escort agencies. I pay my respects to all the heroes and warriors present here. The burly man sitting in the middle of the 5 suddenly stood up and cupped his hands. His voice was like a great bell and rumbled like thunder. It actually drowned out the clamor of the crowd, and the plaza quieted down. Everyone's gazes were involuntarily focused on the chief escort of the 4 Seas Escort Agency. Meanwhile, the escorts from the 32 escort agencies began to rub their palms together in eagerness as they waited for the official duel to begin. This was the best stage for them to show off. The South Continent's Escort Agency Grand Gathering was not only for the competition between the 5 major escort agencies, but also the highest stage for the competition between the escorts. To them, the importance of this grand gathering was akin to the ancient imperial examinations for scholars. It was directly related to their future. If he could perform outstandingly in this conference, even if he was unknown before, his value would definitely skyrocket. It was even possible for him to become the center of attention and enter the upper echelons of the escort agency. On behalf of the 5 major escort agencies, I announced the 37th South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly. Begin. Boundless Sea was clearly someone who disdained wasting words. He didn't bother with any pleasantries. He got straight to the point without saying anything. Let's get to the point. The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers. They admired Boundless Sea's direct and efficient style. To put it bluntly, Boundless Sea's style was very straightforward. Aside from the escorts from the 32 escort agencies, the rest of the crowd had gathered here purely to watch the escorts from the major escort agencies fight to the death. They wanted to see the intense scene where blood was shed with every strike, not the nonsense of those so-called big shots. If Boundless Sea had come up to give his report for an hour, then the majority of the crowd would probably have left. Even the escorts from the escort agencies would have started to doze off. The South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly has been held for so many years. The purpose of holding it is very clear. I believe everyone here knows this as well. It's to take advantage of this rare opportunity to conduct an examination together and improve the escorting skills of the escort agencies. Boundless Sea paused, then turned to the group of escorts and said in a low voice, "Escorting escorts is your main job. It's also the foundation for your survival. If you can't even do this well, what face do you have to be an escort agency? What right do you have to establish yourselves in the South Continent's seas?" So in this Grand Assembly, all the competitions will revolve around escorting escorts. I believe no one has any objections to this, right? The escorts from the 32 escort agencies below the stage nodded in agreement. This was a grand event for South Continent's escort agencies. As escorts, they naturally had to compete in escorting goods. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly be asked to compete in image, temperament, or embroidery, right? It wasn't like they were competing for Invincible East. Very good. Next, Head Escort Zhao Bufan of the Divine Wind Escort Agency will announce the rules for the first round of the competition. Boundless Sea nodded slightly to the middle-aged man sitting to his right and then sat back down. Everyone, the judges have decided that the content of the first round of the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly will be a simulation of escorting escorts that is closely related to everyone's daily life. Escort robbery. Zhao Bufan continued Boundless Sea's words. Everyone's spirits rose when they heard this. Escort robbery. Just from the name alone, they could guess that even though it was the first round of the competition, it definitely wouldn't be easy. However, they were already mentally prepared. After all, in the past South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly, the competition was extremely bloody and cruel. There had never been a lack of deaths. This was also the usual style of the South Continent Sea. Otherwise, if such a highly anticipated escort agency Grand Assembly turned out to be a small scuffle without bloodshed, such a greenhouse competition that couldn't withstand the test, so what if they ended up as the top 5 escort agencies? Could they scare those vicious pirates? In the Southern Continent Sea, there were only 2 things that could truly obtain the right to speak. One was strength and the other was fresh blood. Without either one of them, it would be impossible to suppress those lawless pirates, and they would only be reduced to a complete joke. The rules are very simple. Every escort agency will come out according to the order in which they drew lots. They will send out 4 Golden Core escorts to escort the escorts. The agency that drew the corresponding lot will also send out 4 Golden Core escorts to escort the escorts, Zhao Bufan announced. To put it plainly, it was a 4v4 team battle. However, what made Linny curious was, why was it limited to Golden Core experts? This rule is actually very normal. Even the most powerful 4 Seas escort agency has most of its escorts at the Golden Core stage. It's not that they can't afford to invite nascent soul experts, it's just that if they have to trouble nascent soul experts to escort normal escorts, there won't be much profit for the agency. There's also no need for it, Chi Wenhan explained. Chapter 4407. I see. Lin Yi nodded his head in enlightenment. Although Heaven's Equal Security had a nascent soul expert like Housekeeper Song, he was only there to scare people and wouldn't personally go out to deliver the goods. Since it was a simulation, it naturally had to be restored to the most realistic situation. Usually, it was the Golden Core Stage Escort Masters who were sent out. Naturally, it was the Golden Core Stage Escort Masters who were sent out this time. Otherwise, it would be meaningless if all the major escort agencies sent out their strongest experts. If they sent nascent soul experts, even if they won, they wouldn't be able to display the true skills of the agencies. The 5 agencies that won in the end wouldn't be able to convince the public. The time limit is 1 incense stick's worth of time. If the escort party can successfully defend the escorted goods within the time limit, and all 4 escorts survive and annihilate their opponents, they will get 80 points. For every person the escort party loses, 10 points will be deducted. For every person the escort party survives, 10 points will also be deducted. On the other hand, if the guard doesn't manage to defend the item, they will get 0 points. On the other hand, the robber will get 80 points. With the same logic, for every person they lose, 10 points will be deducted. For every person the enemy survives, 10 points will be deducted. In this round, the 32 agencies will each get 1 chance to defend and 1 chance to rob. When added together, it will be the total points. Do you all understand the rules? Zhao Bufan said to everyone. Yes, sir. The group of escorts replied in unison with great tacit understanding. This rule sounds a little cruel. Lin Yi, on the other hand, couldn't help but be speechless. The rules of the first round of the tournament weren't so much a competition, it was more like killing each other. Moreover, they were using head count points, forcing you to kill each other. To sum it up, whether it was the side guarding or the side robbing, there was only one general principle for the armed escorts who were about to participate in the competition. While ensuring that they survived, they had to try their best to kill their opponents. Only then would they be able to get high points. Lin Yi had participated in all sorts of tests and competitions ever since he came to Sky Class Island, and while competition was encouraged as well, he'd never been in a competition like this, where he was forced to kill his opponent with a head count. All of this could only be attributed to the environment. Compared with the killing competition at present, the trial competitions of the 3 pavilions in the North Island were simply like playing house in a greenhouse. They were too comfortable and unchallenging. No one knew if it was an illusion or if it was real, but from this moment on, the guards of the 32 escort agencies suddenly had an additional layer of chilling killing intent on their bodies. The atmosphere suddenly became unusually solemn, as if they were soldiers who were about to go into battle. Layers of dark clouds floated across the sky, pressing down on everyone's heads. Brother Qi, what are your plans? Lin Yi looked at Qi Wenhan, then turned his head to look at the surrounding escort agencies. Since the rules of the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event were different every year, they had only just learned of the rules. The leaders of the various escort agencies were busy arranging their troops and formations at this moment. This was the first round of the competition. Whether they could win the first battle would directly determine the momentum of the escort agency and indirectly affect the direction of the competition. Therefore, it was of utmost importance and could not be lost. Hearing Lin Yi's question, the guards of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency all looked at Qi Wenhan. Chief Escort Qi Mingyuan was the judge on the stage, so the arrangement of the troops fell on the young master, Qi Wenhan. Everyone's future was naturally in Qi Wenhan's hands. That's a good question, Brother Ling. Although the format of the competition is different in every South Continent Escort Agency festival, the escort agencies that achieve good results in the end all use the same strategy, without exception. Qi Wenhan smiled mysteriously. Oh. Lin Yi could not help but be interested. The strategy is actually very simple. With a great reward there will be brave men. Qi Wenhan glanced at the surrounding guards, then lowered his voice and revealed to Lin Yi, Old Master has already told me before that this competition will not be stingy with the reward, so I have been preparing for it for a long time. Otherwise, how could it have taken so long to scrape together the 300,000 spiritual jades that we paid to the Hong Consortium last time? Lin Yi suddenly understood. So it turned out that he had really been prepared for this long ago. Everyone listen up. In this round of competition, regardless of whether you participate in guarding or robbing, regardless of the outcome, anyone from our agency who participates in the competition will receive a reward of 50,000 spiritual jades. Qi Wenhan announced to the crowd. As soon as he finished speaking, the guards of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency all gasped. Even Lin Yi was a little shocked. 50,000 spiritual jades was not a small sum. Many escorts would not be able to save up such a sum even after working hard for more than 10 years. The Qi father and son were sparing no expense. But thinking about it carefully, in such a cruel competition, every participant was fighting with their lives on the line. Once they stepped into the competition, it meant that they would most likely die. This was not a joke. If there were no benefits, who would be willing to risk their lives for no reason? Only with great rewards would there be death warriors. Not only the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, but the other escort agencies also gave generous rewards to the participants. In order to obtain a good ranking in this year's South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meet, this was the most basic of sacrifices. Of course, for the various escort agencies, this kind of sacrifice was not completely without a reward. On the contrary, if they could win in the competition or even make a name for themselves, the rewards were far more generous than what the average person could imagine. This was not because of the competition's rewards, but because the large chambers of commerce that had been specially invited to watch the competition had all made verbal promises in advance. Many of their large orders would be signed on the spot with the winning agency. At that time, the benefits involved would not be as simple as a mere few tens of thousands of spiritual jades. It would absolutely be an astronomical figure that was sufficient to affect the rise and fall of any escort agency, and even the 5 great escort agencies were no exception. Not only were these orders shocking profits, but they also directly determined the market share. It could be said to be extremely important. Therefore, the father and son, Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, were sparing no expense in order to preserve their influence. 50,000 spiritual jades. In the face of such a generous reward, the escorts of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency began to breathe heavily. Although every other escort agency had also offered generous rewards, there were only a few that had reached the amount of 50,000 spiritual jades. After all, compared to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, which was one of the 5 major escort agencies, the other escort agencies were still lacking in capital. 50,000 spiritual jades per person, including the 4 guards and 4 robbers in the first round of the competition, would add up to a total of 400,000 spiritual jades. This was equivalent to the annual profit of those escort agencies. How many of them could afford it? Chapter 4408. Young master, count me in. Someone rushed to sign up. Me too. Me too. The others did not want to be left behind and eagerly signed up, afraid that the 8 spots would be snatched up by others. Seeing this, Linny could not help but smile. Money makes the world go round. This saying was true. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this kind of competition was a death sentence. It was purely a high-risk job where one's life was on the line. However, in the face of the temptation of 50,000 spiritual jades, no one was afraid even if they became ghosts. Good. The escorts of my Heaven's Equal Escort Agency are indeed courageous and insightful. I was right about you. How about this? Those who are willing to fight, come to me and sign up first. I will then choose from among you. Qi Wenhan said happily. The power of the spiritual jade was truly limitless. In just a short period of time, the number of escorts from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had already reached more than 10, far exceeding the 8 spots required for the competition. This gave Qi Wenhan more or less leeway to arrange his troops. The first battle directly affected the morale of the entire competition. Whether or not they could get off to a good start was of utmost importance. If possible, each escort agency would send out as many strong people as possible. Even if they were not their trump cards, they would at least be the best in the agency. However, there was an important prerequisite. These people had to volunteer for the competition. After all, unlike a sect that had absolute control over its disciples, the relationship between an escort agency and its escorts was purely one of profit and employment. It was just like how it was in a normal escort business. Whether or not the escorts were willing to take on the job depended entirely on the escorts themselves. The agency could not force them, nor would it force them. A melon that was forcefully picked would not be sweet. Not to mention whether or not the escorts would accept the agency's offer. Even if they were forced to participate, they would only do the work without putting in the effort. In the end, the agency would still be the one suffering the loss. Therefore, if any escort agency wanted to achieve the best results in arranging their troops, they could only do what the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency did. They could only use benefits to entice the escorts to volunteer for the competition like the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Only the best among them would have the strength and motivation to truly fight for the agency. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan was usually the one in charge. Naturally, he knew the strength of these escorts like the back of his hand. His gaze swept over the faces of each of the registered escorts, and he had already made his decision. After all, he had been holed up in the inn for the past few days, making all sorts of preparations. These efforts were not in vain. Brother Ling, what do you think? Qi Wenhan turned his head to ask Lin Yi. Although he already had a conclusion in his heart, he still had to consider Lin Yi's opinion. After all, Lin Yi was his most important trump card. Brother Qi, you are the commander-in-chief. How you arrange the troops is up to you. Whoever you say should be the one to go. Why are you asking me? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. With his strength. In the gold core stage he was an invincible existence. For others, the first round of the competition was a narrow escape, but for him there was no pressure at all. It was up to him whether to go or not. It all depended on whether or not Qi Wenhan had made such arrangements. If there weren't enough people, Lin Yi wouldn't have any objections even if he went up to make up the numbers. Ah, 2 heads are better than 1. Brother Ling, you can also help me out. How about it? Brother Ling, are you interested in going up to play? Qi Wenhan laughed heartily. For Lin Yi, this kind of competition was really just for fun. It depends on how Brother Qi arranges it. If I'm needed, then I'll go up. Lin Yi smiled faintly, then paused and said, but I'm more concerned about the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Will Wu Baoliang go up in the first round of the competition? If he goes up, Brother Qi, you have to leave a spot for me. Wu Baoliang was the secret military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary group. His status was almost equal to Cheng Haonan's. Now that the Poison Eye mercenary group was an important external aid for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, Wu Baoliang was to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency just like Lin Yi was to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. He was definitely a powerful trump card. In order to compete for the position of the top 5 escort agencies, if the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was determined to gain the upper hand in the first round of the competition, it was very likely that they would send out Wu Baoliang. Lin Yi's original intention for this South Continent Escort Agency Grand Meeting was to fight against Wu Baoliang. Even if he might not be able to draw the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, he would not let go of this chance. Otherwise, if he could not get rid of Wu Baoliang in this meeting, it would not be so easy to deal with this guy in the future. Yes, before the drawing begins, each escort agency has to submit the list of participating escorts to the judging panel. I'll go tell the old man and ask him to pay attention. If there is one, I'll report Brother Ling's name. If there isn't, then forget it. Qi Wenhan nodded and said. Although he was also determined to win the first round of the competition, he did not intend to let Lin Yi participate in the first round. After all, he had positioned Lin Yi as a powerful trump card to turn the tables on Gan Hun at a critical moment. If he used him in the first round, not only would it be overkill, but it would also expose his own trump card and put him in a passive position in the following rounds. Moreover, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was one of the top 5 escort agencies. Even if they were ranked last, they still had enough confidence. As long as they were not too unlucky in drawing the lots with the first-class experts in the agency, they should be able to get off to a good start. Therefore, there was no need for Lin Yi to participate in the first round of the competition. Of course, if it was because of Wu Baoliang that Lin Yi decided to participate, then it would be a different story. Qi Wenhan immediately took a pen and paper and wrote down 2 lists of 8 people. One of them had Lin Yi in it and the other did not have Lin Yi. This was to be used as a contingency plan. Then he walked up to the stage in the middle in high spirits. At this time, because the drawing of lots was about to begin, most of the 32 agencies had already prepared a list of 8 people and submitted it to the judging panel. However, Qi Wenhan did not submit it immediately. Instead, he ran up to his father, Qi Mingyuan, and whispered a few words in his ear. Then he walked down with the list and waited to the side. Not only Qi Wenhan, but the other agencies also had people waiting to the side. They all had one thing in common: they were all from the top 5 escort agencies. First, look at the list of participants from the other agencies. Once they knew their opponents, they would then make a targeted arrangement. This had always been the privilege of the top 5 escort agencies. This was something that the other agencies could not help but be envious of. Because there was no one on the judging panel, it was useless even if they deliberately delayed. They could not see the list of participants from the other agencies, so naturally they could not target them. They could only rely on their own strength. Fortunately, the list of participants was submitted before the drawing of lots. Up until now, no one knew each other's opponents, so it was relatively fair. Chapter 4409. There wouldn't be a situation where an escort agency would be purposely targeted. The 5 escort agencies would at most make some minor adjustments to their strategy and wouldn't specifically target one agency. Thus, everyone turned a blind eye to it and acted as though it was nothing out of the ordinary. As one of the 5 escort agencies, they had some privileges. In the South Continent Sea, where the strong preyed on the weak, it was already rare to be able to achieve such a level of fairness. No one was stupid enough to ask for so-called true fairness. After waiting for a while, Qi Mingyuan finally saw the name list of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. He shook his head at Qi Wenhan, indicating that he didn't see Wu Baoliang. Only then did Qi Wenhan hand in the 8-name list that he had prepared in advance. Soon after, the representatives of the other 5 major escort agencies submitted their name lists. Compared to the newly promoted Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, they were clearly more experienced in the way they did things. Qi Wenhan was waiting for the Dragon Boat Escort Agency's name list while they were waiting for the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's name list. The biggest competitor of the 5 escort agencies had always been each other. The threat that the other agencies posed to them was far from their own. After the 32 escort agencies submitted their name lists, Zhao Bufan represented the judging team and gathered all the people in charge of the escort agencies together. Under everyone's supervision, they started to draw lots in front of everyone. Since ancient times, in any form of competition, the drawing of lots had always been the segment where dirty tricks were most likely to occur. It was also the segment where it was most likely to be manipulated under the table. Therefore, everyone paid particular attention to it and paid particular attention to it. As a result, not only were the judges from the 5 escort agencies watching the entire drawing process, but there were also the other powers that were invited to watch. Under the supervision of so many experts, if there was anyone who could play dirty tricks, that person would have to be as heaven-defying as Lin Yi. Very quickly. Under everyone's gaze, the results of the drawing were announced. Not mentioning the other escort agencies, at least the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's draw wasn't too bad. After 2 draws, the opponent for the escort battle was the Horse Escort Agency while the opponent for the escort robbery battle was Yongxing Escort Agency. What was worth rejoicing was that both the Horse Escort Agency and Yongxing Escort Agency weren't part of the 5 escort agencies. They were not part of the top 5 escort agencies. Not now, not in the past. Therefore, in terms of overall strength, it was obvious that the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was stronger. However, Qi Wenhan wasn't the least bit happy about the result of the draw. Although the strength of these 2 escort agencies couldn't compare to the 5 major escort agencies, they were definitely not weak. In the last South Continent Escort Agency Festival, these 2 companies ranked 11th and 13th respectively. Moreover, the strength of these 2 escort agencies was very stable. Not only in the previous Grand Assembly, but also in the previous Grand Assemblies. In other words, among all the 32 escort agencies, although the Noon Horse Escort Agency and Yongxing Escort Agency weren't the best, they were still the best. But it was completely worthy of the above-average evaluation. More importantly, they were different from the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. In order to deal with the upcoming main event, Qi Wenhan still had to consider conserving his strength in case he ran out of stamina. However, neither the Noon Horse Escort Agency nor the Yongxing Escort Agency had such thoughts. Their typical strategy was to fight to the death with all their might in every match and would never deliberately conserve their strength. To them, the throne of the top 5 escort agencies was an unattainable dream. Their most realistic goal was to maintain their ranking. It was already a great success to be able to squeeze into the top 10 this time. Their previous rankings were obtained by fighting to the death with others. This time they naturally had to fight to the death. Therefore, these 2 agencies were definitely very hard to deal with. It was no wonder that Qi Wenhan was frowning. This was the first time he had led a team to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Festival. If they got off to a bad start and failed miserably at the beginning, they would really be too ashamed to face others. Don't be nervous. We are the stronger side. There will be no problem as long as we perform as we normally do. They should be the ones who should be nervous. Lin Yi patted Qi Wenhan's shoulder and comforted him. Brother Ling is right. I was blinded by the situation. Qi Wenhan instantly broke out in a cold sweat. He turned his head to look at the group of escorts who were all focused on him, and nodded gratefully at Lin Yi. The general was the soldier's courage. The war had yet to officially begin, and if even he, the young master, was thrown into disarray, the impact on everyone's morale could be imagined. If he allowed this panic to spread, it was possible that the army would really be defeated like a collapsing mountain. Lin Yi smiled. He did not care too much about the results of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. However, he would not just stand by and watch Qi Wenhan and the others commit such a low-level mistake. Even if it was just for the sake of their friendship, he still wanted the Heavens Equal Escort Agency to maintain its position as one of the top 5 escort agencies. Otherwise, as the powerful trump card of the Qi father and son, Lin Yi would lose face. Looking at the matchups announced on the huge notice board, the escorts of the 32 escort agencies all rubbed their hands in glee. Finally, under the announcement of the judging panel, they all lined up and marched into their respective competition grounds. For every escort agency, there were 2 matches in the first round of the competition. One was to guard the escorts and the other was to snatch the escorts. There was no time to adjust between the 2 matches, and they would start at the same time. In the huge magic cold square, the 32 escort agencies each occupied a space. In the center of each space, there was a treasure chest that had been prepared beforehand. This was their escorts, and it could also be said that this was their arena. 8 escorts would fight. 4 of them would be tasked with guarding their escorts and their arena, while the other 4 would be tasked with snatching the escorts from the opposing agency's arena. The judging panel gave the order, and the 32 matches of the first round began at the same time. In 32 arenas, 256 Golden Core stage escorts began to fight. The atmosphere in the square was instantly pushed to its peak, and deafening cheers and shouts soared into the sky. The escorts in the arena were either attacking, defending, confronting each other, or cruising around. Everyone was as if they were facing a formidable enemy, and none of them dared to let their guard down. At this moment, the people who were the busiest were not the escorts, but the people in charge of the various escort agencies. Qi Wenhan, for example, could not attend to both matches at the same time because they were held in 2 different arenas. In the end, he had no choice but to seek help from Steward Song, asking him to supervise the other escort robbery match. Steward Song's position in the Equal of Heaven escort agency was not inferior to Qi Wenhan's. With him supervising the match, the escorts did not dare to be negligent. However, in the face of Qi Wenhan's request for help, Steward Song shook his head mysteriously and pointed at Lin Yi. That's right. Qi Wenhan finally reacted, and he secretly praised Uncle Song's brilliance. How far-sighted. Chapter 44:10. Rather than having Uncle Song supervise the battle, it would be better to entrust this task to Ling Yi. Nominally he was asking for his help, but in reality he was showing that he valued this opportunity to improve their relationship, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Brother Ling, I can only entrust this matter to you. You must help me with this. Qi Wenhan turned to Lin Yi for help. Then, all right. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback, but he did not refuse and immediately agreed. Although he wasn't as deeply rooted in the escort agency as Steward Song, with his status and strength, especially his past achievements, everyone in the agency was still in awe of him. However, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to supervise a battle. Moreover, Lin Yi was also quite interested in this matter. He was used to fighting with others personally, but he had never been an on-the-spot coach before. Today was the perfect opportunity for him to have some fun. Qi Wenhan himself guarded the escort battle, while Lin Yi led the 4 Golden Core escorts to the arena of Yongxing Escort Agency to rob their escorts and fight them. At this moment, the 4 escorts from Yongxing Escort Agency had already entered the arena. They were all prepared to face a formidable enemy and were ready to fight. Just as Lin Yi had said to Qi Wenhan, Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was one of the 5 major escort agencies. Although the 4 escorts from Yongxing Escort Agency were prepared to fight to the death before entering the arena, they could not help but feel nervous at this time. However, the 4 escorts who had come with Lin Yi were not nervous at all. This was the way of the world. The more important the battle, the more critical the situation, the stronger the enemy. It was important to have confidence. If one was afraid before the battle, even if they had a 40% chance of winning, it would be reduced to 30% or even less. Lin Yi sized up the strength of the 4. 2 were at the peak of the late Golden Core stage and 2 were at the late Golden Core stage. In the Golden Core stage, their strength was considered relatively strong. It was considered average. If he was not mistaken, these should be the best under the command of Yongxing Escort Agency. Because the escort guarding battle and the escort robbing battle started at the same time, and there was a time limit of 30 minutes, the escort guarding side naturally had a certain advantage over the escort robbing side. Therefore, many escort agencies would put their experts in the escort guarding battle. This way they could guarantee the scoring rate. On the other hand, the 4 of them had 1 Golden Core Paragon and 3 Golden Core Late Stage. They were basically on par with each other, with neither an advantage nor a disadvantage. As for the direction of the match, it was entirely dependent on the performance of both sides. Remember, in the first half an incense stick of time, don't make any attacks. At most, make some probing feints but don't get entangled with the opponent. This is a 4-man team battle. You must protect each other and not leave any openings for each other. Lin Yi quickly entered the role of an on-the-spot coach. The 4 of them couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Even if they had such a duel in the past, it would be impossible. No one had ever given him such a detailed strategy. At most, they would stand at the side and supervise the battle. Who would have thought that Lin Yi would be able to explain it in such a professional manner? Little did they know. Lin Yi was treating himself like a coach in the mundane world. Everything on the field was done by the players, of course, but Lin Yi didn't care. However, a truly brilliant coach would firmly grasp the direction of the match in his own hands, and then determine the final result. It was the same principle at this moment. But we only have 30 minutes. If we don't attack in the first half an incense stick of time, I'm afraid the remaining 30 minutes won't be enough, right? The four of them looked at each other hesitantly. Finally, the most powerful expert in the Golden Core Paragon spoke up. To be honest, although Lin Yi had not joined the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency for a long time, with his previous heaven-defying deeds, his dazzling identity, and the fact that he was the honorary escort chief personally promised by the chief escort chief, Qi Mingyuan, the four of them were actually in awe of Lin Yi. They dared not disobey Lin Yi's instructions. However, they were now risking their lives to fight. Regardless of whether it was for themselves or for the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, they had to win this match. Otherwise, if they didn't have this resolve, they would only die even faster in this cruel battle of life and death. That was why they were worried. What if they did not have enough time and failed to steal the goods? What would they do then? If they failed to steal the goods, they would not get a single point. Even if they survived, how would they face the entire escort agency? How would they have the face to take the 50,000 spiritual jades? After all, they still had to continue working in the escort agency in the future. They were all people who cared about their reputation. It was not a good feeling to be gossiped about behind their backs or even pointed at in front of them. No, we have enough time. Lin Yi shook his head confidently. He analyzed the situation for the four of them. Don't misunderstand. This match may seem like a life and death match, but the key is not the killing but the goods. Aren't we fighting for the number of points? The four of them could not help but look at each other. This first match was nominally about stealing the goods. However, anyone who had read the rules would know that it was obviously a competition of points based on the number of people killed. As for the goods, it was just a symbolic gimmick. If it's just a simple fight, don't you think it's too unskillful? Simple and violent tactics like this are very effective when you have the absolute advantage, but look at the opponent's strength. How confident do you think you'll be able to survive if you fight like this? Lin Yi asked. That's right. The four of them choked. They weren't fools. Both sides were equally matched in strength. If the competition continued to develop in a cruel direction, it wasn't impossible for all of them to be wiped out. It was already very rare for two of them to survive in the end. Remember, this match is not a simple fight. What you have to do is not only kill your opponent but also protect yourselves. And the key to this lies in that box of goods. Lin Yi reminded them seriously. According to the rules of the match, whichever side has the goods will naturally have the upper hand. As long as they have the upper hand, they will be able to control the flow of the match. You will be able to secure points and escape unscathed at the same time. Hearing this, the four of them's eyes lit up. They were indeed fighting with the belief that they would die. However, if they could score points and escape unscathed at the same time, who would really want to die? Escort leader Ling, tell us what we should do. We will listen to you. The Golden Core Perfected Escort was the first to express his stance. Chapter 44:11. It's very simple. Just do as I said. Use the first half of the incense stick to test the waters. Wait for the other party to reveal a flaw, then strike hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember their numbers and listen to my instructions. You guys work together to kill whoever I tell you to. Don't hesitate, do you understand? Lin Yi paused for a moment, then pointed at the four guards from Yongxing Escort Agency. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember their numbers and listen to my instructions. Yes, sir. The four of them looked at each other and nodded. Then they turned around and entered the arena. Success or failure depended on this one move. Seeing the four from Heaven's Equal Security Agency enter the arena, the four from Yongxing Security Agency who were already on standby, looked at each other and became even more nervous. They did not know what the other party was planning, but they could at least sense one thing. The other party did not come with good intentions. So the Heaven's Equal Security Agency is only SOSO. On the opposite side of the arena, a woman purposely shouted. Judging from her attire and the attitude of the people around her, she should be the person in charge of Yongxing Security Agency. Lin Yi looked at her in surprise. In the chaotic waters of the South Continent, it was naturally difficult for female cultivators to gain a foothold. Yet, this woman was able to become the person in charge of Yongxing Security Agency. It was quite rare. Only by overwhelming everything can one emerge victorious in the end. Other than that, all conspiracies and schemes are laughable, self-deceiving. You don't even understand such a basic principle. It seems like the Heaven's Equal Security Agency is really useless. You can't even find someone who can hold up the front. You were lucky to be one of the top 5 security agencies last time. You don't live up to your reputation, the woman said mockingly. The people around her were instantly attracted to her. Lin Yi's gaze also landed on her. However, he only curled the corner of his mouth slightly. He had no intention of retorting. He was not in the mood to bicker with a woman in such an occasion. Not to mention anything else, the woman's words had at least one effect. The 4 escorts from Yongqing Security Agency were obviously not as nervous as before. Deliberately belittling their opponent might have side effects, but at least it could build confidence. In a situation where both parties were equally matched, having confidence was more important than anything else. At this moment, the participants from both sides were already standing in their respective positions. As the staff of the convention lit incense sticks by the side of the stage, the first round of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency versus the Yongqing Escort Agency had officially begun. A man's reputation is like a tree's shadow. After all, the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency was one of the 5 great escort agencies. It was only natural that they would have an advantage in terms of mentality and aura. Under such circumstances, the members of the Yongqing Escort Agency thought that the other party would attack them without hesitation. However, the reality was that the 4 members of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were cautious and maintained a tight formation so that they could take care of each other. He stood in confrontation with them from afar, and didn't seem to have any intention to attack. See? This is your opponent, this kind of coward who mutters for a long time but doesn't have the slightest bit of manliness. As a robber, he behaved like a coward, hiding in his shell and not daring to move. How could he be a match for our Yongqing Escort Agency? If we can't even beat this kind of trash, we can all go eat shit. Seeing this, the woman began to wantonly clamor again. The surrounding spectators burst into laughter. Although this escort leader of the Yongqing Escort Agency was a woman, her words were far more offensive than those of the other men. Moreover, she didn't need to care about bearing like men did. No matter how much she spoke, no one would blame her. This was simply infuriating. The 4 members of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency were clearly starting to lose their cool after being provoked by this woman so brazenly. They were here to fight with their lives on the line, not to be ridiculed by this woman. With so many people watching, they couldn't afford to lose face like this. Moreover, in front of women, men were naturally extremely competitive creatures. Even if they were beaten until their faces were swollen, they would still try to act strong. This was an innate instinct that was written in their genes before they were even born. The 4 of them couldn't hold back their anger and finally launched their first attack. The strongest person who had attained the Golden Elixir realm was the first to attack. However, he wasn't completely blinded by anger. Although he attacked in anger, he consciously chose the weakest of the 4, the Golden Elixir realm, as a breakthrough point. Lin Yi watched this scene from the sidelines and didn't say anything to stop it. Although he had asked the 4 of them to restrain themselves during the first half of the incense stick, this kind of probing attack was not a bad idea. On the other side, the female escort leader of the Yongqing Escort Agency suddenly revealed a smug sneer, as if her scheme had succeeded. Although she was a shrewd person, she wouldn't go so far as to ridicule in front of so many people without caring about her image. The reason why she did this was to provoke her opponent into taking the initiative. The defending side had a natural advantage. As long as they could defend the escorts within the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they would be able to score. However, the female escort leader of the Yongqing Escort Agency wouldn't be satisfied so easily. She had placed the 4 strongest escorts in this escort battle. As for the escort robbery battle, she did not have any hope at all. This was because the opponent was the most powerful escort agency among the 32 escort agencies, the 4C's Escort Agency. It was no different from a fool's dream to want to score points from them. This defense battle was crucial to the entire Yongqing Escort Agency. Not only did they have to score points, but they also had to score as many points as possible. Only in this way would they not be left behind by the other escort agencies. Therefore, simply defending the escorts was not enough. She had to find a way to provoke her opponent into taking the initiative and making mistakes. Only in this way could they score points from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Based on the current situation, her provocative strategy was obviously working. In terms of individual strength, the expert in the Golden Elixir realm of the Equal Escort Agency was the strongest among the 8 people present. His choice of breakthrough point was the weakest of the 8, the Golden Elixir realm. At first glance it seemed very wise. However, since the Yongqing Escort Agency dared to use such a provocative strategy, how could they not be prepared at all? Raging fire burns the city. The 4 people of the Yongqing Escort Agency suddenly joined hands to form a seal. 4 walls of fire suddenly rose into the sky without warning, trapping the lone expert in the Golden Elixir realm of the Exceptional Escort Agency. From the looks of it, they were going to take this opportunity to annihilate him in one fell swoop. Oh no, hurry up and save him. Fortunately, the escorts of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency still remembered Lin Yi's instructions and didn't completely let the expert in the golden elixir realm of the exceptional escort agency take the risk alone. Although the other three were a step behind, they could at least assist him. At this thought, the three of them hurriedly launched a joint attack.